Here's one. This sounds like a deadly headline. 7 Florida cities that could be heading for a housing crisis.
You got to hit a scary sound effect like that. You got to do that in the demon voice.
7 Florida cities that could be headed for a housing crisis.
Christ.
They should have never given me this thing.
No, absolutely not.
I've tried to be tame with it because it could get out of hand real fast.
With just the headphones.
I like to leave voicemails in that voice.
Exactly.
If it didn't feel official before,
Oh, it sure does
it's
now.
100% official.
We're rolling, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Florida Housing Hour podcast. Discussions with housing industry insiders. What do you think of that name? Is that name going to work?
It sounds very important.
It does.
It is kind of wordy, though.
Well, that's the Florida Housing Hour.
Florida Housing Hour. Okay.
Discussions with housing industry insiders.
Okay.
It's one of those.
As long as that all of that doesn't try to fit on a YouTube description.
No.
You know, the Florida Housing Hour, I can see. It's already kind of a tongue twister, a little bit harder to say.
Florida Housing Hour.
Florida Housing Hour.
Florida Housing Hour.
Say it 5 times fast.
Florida Housing Hour. The Florida Housing Hour. Florida Housing Hour. Florida Housing Hour. And Florida Housing Hour.
Now it's Housing Hour.
Yeah, well, you still understand.
Now it's Ford's Garage.
So what this is all about, the Florida Housing Hour, this is a place that you can tune in. You can learn all kinds of information about the Florida market, the people who work in it, and the industry, and all kinds of stuff.
I love that.
No parameters on this podcast. The questions bring up more questions and observations and stories. So we got no time limit. We got no constraints. We're here to party. Now
We've got all kinds of flexibility.
That's right.
I'm all about this. I can get comfy. I can lean back and relax if I want to.
this report just came in this morning, and now I was hesitant to say this. It's unconfirmed, but we're hearing reports that we are the #1 podcast in this business park.
I love that.
It's not confirmed yet. Hopefully nobody beats us, but
I love
as
that.
of today, we are the #1 podcast in this business park.
You know what? I loved the fact that you invited me as a guest on the #1 podcast.
I'm so happy that you made it. Speaking of guests, by the way, this is David Hardy. He is a mortgage loan originator in the state of Florida. And tell us a little bit about what you do in your... No, let's start. Tell us a little bit about your background.
My background.
Where are you coming from?
So originally, I started off in the military. I say that starts off with a good background description because that led into a lot of the loan stuff. So I'll do it as a segue, basically. So I started off in the military. I was working with amphibious assault vehicles, which are kind of like big tanks. You know, we in the industry or actually in the Marine Corps, if we call them tanks, we get, hazed a little bit. So they're not tanks, they're track vehicles. It's a big time difference between my tracker community. But I was a crew chief on one of these 20-ton tanks that transport troops from ship to shore. Spent a lot of time, doing one-on-one discussions with a lot of people because there's a lot of downtime in the military. So I ended up finding out my niche of being able to entertain people and have good conversation with people and be able to bring it out because when people are in the field, they are kind of crabby. I was always the source of, or tried to be the source of entertainment and kind of entertain the guys. I was the jester, you know what I mean? Always trying to make a goofy laugh or whatever in really crappy times when we were just bored or in a really crappy situation.
Yeah.
Stuck in the mud, sleeping outside.
So what year did you join?
So I joined in 2009. I went to high school and then I went to college for a little bit. Found out that my parents had cancer. So I dropped out of college, lost my scholarship because I dropped out and immediately went home and joined the military so that I could try to help them out with treatments. But at the same time, once I lost my scholarship, I was like, what am I going to do now? Maybe I'll get my scholarship back by going to the military and getting my scholarship back, or going back to school and having the military pay for it. And then I just never went back to school. I ended up just going into the Marines, starting that, going active duty for a little while, switched over to the reserves. And once I became the reservist, I started working for a company called the Laser Spine Institute. I ended up knowing some people who knew some people who were connected to some people and family members of people. It was just a perfect storm for me to be able to get like a really great like job opportunity. Excuse me. In order to be able to get this job opportunity, I interviewed for it, and I kind of took off with that. And that kind of started my business career, I would say. I worked in retail for Sprint right before I started working with the Spine Institute. But that got me really good with face-to-face sales and asking questions, probing questions of what to sell people, what to talk about, how to keep their attention when you're trying to present a product.
Right.
I think that's the most important part. And then from that went to the Laser Spine Institute. All of that was over the phone. So that was a completely different type of sales background. I had to really switch up the way that I was, because I feel like I could read people well and the conversations are pretty fluid and regular, but I don't feel as if you can really read people very well over the phone if you're used to face-to-face.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's a completely different world.
Right.
Completely different world. I mean, I know you've done things over the phone in the past. Weren't you in credit collections?
Yeah.
One point in time?
Yep.
I mean, that's got to be the hardest people to ever talk to.
Well, I did mortgage collections.
Oh,
so
even worse.
Well, I think it's probably better because, it's not an annoyance. Like we're talking about what the sheriff coming to your house and evicting you. That's what the beginning of that process is like. So that's what it leads to, right? So if you don't pay attention and fix it, like it's not a credit card that just kind of floats off and goes away if you pay it or not. It winds up as a collection, doesn't kick you out on the street. So I think the people that had it the hardest were the auto, or I'm sorry, excuse me. I think the easiest way to collect is auto.
Really? Easiest way?
Yeah, I think those are the faster payers because
we're going to steal your car.
We're
going to take a car if you don't pay it.
The sheriff's sale is way far down the road. If you're missing a payment or running behind or something, it's like, a year, 6 months, 2 years, depending on your state, backlog, timeline, all that. Car is like, hey, you're a month late.
We're going to come get it.
We're coming to find it and take it back.
Yeah.
And people can't live without their car, right? They got to go and work and run their kids and school and errands and everything. So they're not going to let their car go. So all those guys that I remember in auto, we had multiple divisions. It was household, or HFC is what they started as, HFC beneficial, and then household, and it was household finance, household mortgage services is who I worked for. And I started calling 30-day lates, which is one payment. You're past your grace period, you missed your one payment. Largest percentage of the pie of, delinquency. And it was just straight dialer. You had thousands of people in a dialer, and you just boop, you get presented.
Next person.
You're like, hello, hey, I'm calling from here.
Next person.
Yeah, this is an attempt to collect a debt, and everything you say can be recorded. And
yeah, I bet you could spin that off and say that recording thing in your sleep because you've said it 100,000 times. What I wonder if they started doing that for like cell phones. I wonder if if you missed a mortgage payment, then someone would come repo your cell phone from you, how quickly they would pay their mortgage payment.
Yeah, they'd get it.
But
that was sales to me.
Yeah,
mortgage collections, it was totally sales because you're getting commitments from people, you're helping them work things out, and you're figuring out a way to get it done.
Yeah,
and the better you are at that, the better you get rewarded in bonus and promotions and advancement and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like I started in a sales job without even realizing it.
Yeah.
I still felt like I wasn't doing sales when I was in there, but it was absolutely persuasion and sales.
I kind of feel like anything that has to do with overcoming objections ends up kind of ultimately being a sales job. Mm-hmm. If you do whatever your particular, type of job is, if you're in a particular place where you have to constantly overcome objections from people that are not trying to purchase something or pay for something or anything,
somebody to do something.
Persuasion of some kind, and you need to overcome verbal and mental objections from people to be able to make them do that. You're selling somebody.
That's true. Yeah,
you're selling somebody.
Now, what's completely different about the real estate and home loan arena is that you don't just hard close someone the day that you meet them and they walk out the door with a product,
Yeah,
right? Or they accomplish their goal right then and there.
absolutely.
This industry is much more of an advisor based. Here's what we can do, problem solving, obstacle clearing, sales consultant. I don't like using the word sales in this real estate salesperson,
No.
estate. I don't feel like that's unless you're maybe in a model center.
Yeah.
And you go show people a house and then you come back and sign them up on a contract. Like, okay, that kind of works, right? That could be a sales position. But,
Yeah.
When you're just with people for the long haul, it's just a different perspective, I feel.
I feel like I started to originally, when I first started doing anything that had to do with being a loan originator, at first I kind of took care of, the conversation, and the way that I handled the conversation was very similar to that of a one-call close, or purchasing something and they're about to walk out. Like, they had to, almost as if I was trying to make sure they made a decision on who they were going to use for their mortgage right away, because that's the type of sale I was used to.
You're used to it, right? Talk to somebody.
Got to get them in. You gotta bring them close. Build up break down the barriers of conversation and those barriers of standoff defensiveness that people have whenever they know that you're trying to sell them something, and then eventually build a relationship and a rapport with them. I feel like at first I started to really try to rush that too quick, and it wasn't as successful. Now I feel like a lot of the people that I end up helping with getting a loan, it's because of the fact that they've talked to me 25 times.
Yeah.
And it's more of a developed relationship of knowing that I'm always going to pick up the phone, knowing that I'm always going to answer back their text messages, and we're going to answer their emails. We're going to be there.
It's a true consultant.
Correct. Yeah.
The real estate and mortgage, they come alongside of people through this journey that they go through of home buying or refining or investment or whatever they're going to do. They have somebody that's in their corner.
Mortgage
basically.
advisor. I end up being a guidance counselor sometimes for certain people, and a lot of people mix up our particular profession with a lot of like financial planners and financial recovery. I guess you could say a lot of credit adjustments and things like that they feel as if we are going to know all the answers about exactly how to get to certain credit scores or how much money should I save. And it's like, that's a tricky and really interesting conversation, because you don't want to not be a source for them of information, but you also don't want to talk outside your lane.
Right. Well, it's the same thing as giving legal advice or tax advice. Those positions are licensed and you're not allowed to charge for that kind of advice. And when you have a mortgage license, you don't want to misconstrue the two and be walking in gray areas. So
Yeah, because if you're wrong, it's on you.
Yeah. And that's what I do. I always give them options and say, here, this is how you could save X amount of dollars. Talk to your financial planner about it.
Yeah.
Talk to your financial planner about it. And if you need somebody to talk to, I'll be happy to set you up with someone and, you can talk to them. So that's a good point. I think all the successful agents that I know, real estate agents and loan officers, are exactly that. They are not just numbers driven only.
Yeah.
There's a huge relationship component to the way that job works. And
Building rapport is everything.
that's the way it should be. That's why a lot of these bigger outfits come and go and don't have the most stellar record of customer service and satisfaction. These big transactional real estate iBuyers and these big conglomerates that try to take over the market.
Yep.
When times are good, who was it? Open Door, right? That
Open Door.
They had to fire sale all their listings because they were losing so much money and everything just
Nonstop.
went crazy.
Yeah.
So it all comes to, it's still local. It's still super local. It's still super personal. And the robots have not killed that aspect of this yet.
I still enjoy that mail though. I still enjoy that mail. I'm always interested to open up an open door piece of mail to find out what they say that my house is going to be worth, or what they would be willing to pay for in cash.
Right.
Off of a house
Before
that they
come look
seen.
at it and take off 10,000 and
Yeah.
20,000 and 30,000.
I'm like,
here.
oh really? I'm sure this is official. Because you guys haven't seen a single lick of my house.
You don't sound like you're from Florida. Where are you from?
So originally, even though I don't sound like any of my cousins, I'm actually from Georgia. Albany,
Zinger.
Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's South Georgia?
Yeah, it's definitely South Georgia.
Yeah. South Georgia had a minute in the last few years, like with all the talent coming out of there and the country music.
Oh, really?
Luke Bryan and Jason Aldean.
Oh, yeah.
Like those are all South Georgia boys.
So I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe Luke Bryan came from like right where I was basically born. My cousin knew him well.
Okay.
To
cool.
where they actually like at one point in time he bragged to me. He says, "I've got Luke Bryan's phone number in my phone, man." I'm like, all right, I get it, I understand. So my whole family is kind of very diverse. My dad's from Massachusetts, and he doesn't have a wicked hard Boston accent or nothing. My sisters do. My older sisters do, because they grew up and stayed there. But my dad was not about to have his sons and his daughter have a Southern accent either. That wasn't going to happen. So my mom and dad met in Georgia. My mom was actually a wedding singer, believe it or not, however much of a weird tale and story tale this is. She was a wedding singer, met her at a wedding. They ended up started to date. And then once, they got married and was about to have my older brother for their first kid, they decided that like, we're not going to raise our kids here. So my brother and I and my little sister were born. And then once we were born, they moved us to Tampa and moved us to Brandon. So pretty much Brandon has been all I've really known for, I was raised here. I went to Burns Middle School. I went to Lithia Springs Elementary. I went to Bloomingdale High School. This whole area in Brandon has pretty much been like my home base. But the military moved me around a little bit. And then, the Laser Spine Institute moved me around a little bit.
Where did you go to basic?
So I was in Paradise Island, Paradise Island, funnest place on earth, of course. Home of the sand flea, where you just get eaten alive. I went to Paradise Island, and then we go to combat training as soon as you get out of boot camp. Combat training is in North Carolina. And you're there for a couple of weeks, depending on, between boot camp and combat training. It's like 62 days of training for boot camp, and then you do another couple of weeks for combat training, and then they send you to your MOS school. My MOS school was in California. So I went over to Camp Pendleton in California and was there.
Is that the base that they do train basic at too?
So it's
Pendleton?
close. Yeah, it's not directly on Pendleton, but it's
like in that area.
Close to it. Yeah.
What's it called out
They
there?
call them Hollywood Marines. Hollywood Marines.
What's the official name of it? Remember?
We should probably look that up.
That's fine.
I should probably know that on camera. Is it Camp Pendleton? No. Yeah, it might be Camp Pendleton, just a different section of it that I've never been to.
Bridgeport?
Is it Bridgeport?
Well,
see, the way that I see it, Marines have very strong opinions about who's tougher.
the West Coast or East Coast?
Yes, it's a constant conflict between the two. If you were a West Coast Marine, you're going to make fun of East Coast Marines, and vice versa. Because we have, in Paris Island, the original birthplace of the Marine, I might add.
They call it the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego.
Yep.
Okay.
And at the depot, they have certain types of things that are much more difficult for like hiking. Mm-hmm. You know, they have what they actually call Mount Mother Believe it or not, they had this giant mountain out there that they make them hike.
Yeah, there's elevation there.
I've never.
Like Paris Island doesn't have elevation, does it? Just flat.
It's flat.
Yeah.
But we've got the heat.
Humidity.
That's nonstop. The humidity, the sand fleas,
Yep.
and the remote aspect of it. In California, everything's pretty
San Diego.
visible. San Diego.
Yeah, right.
Literally, I went there one time, and literally as I could see a bus of recruits getting off the bus, there's a plane going over the top. And I don't know about other Marines, but for me, that would be worse than being in a remote area, is seeing all these people about to go on vacation. And you're stuck in Marine Corps boot camp for the next, 62 days.
Yeah.
And apparently there's an airport right next to it. They could just see flights going whenever they're doing these training stuff. And that would get in my head, I feel. Now, when I was in Paris Island, you're on your own. There's no one out there. There's no one out there to save you. There's no visibility of any kind. Whatever they want to do to make it to where it's going to be a very difficult day for you, they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way off.
That's what they're there for. What turns out tough Marines.
Yep.
That's great. What do you do around here now for fun? Like when you're not being the loan officer, what are you doing?
A couple different things. I have obviously, because of the fact that I was raised here, I have a pretty good friend base that's here. Lots of different types of groups of friends, depending on what it is that my girlfriend and I are trying to get into for the weekend. I really have picked up playing golf a lot recently, and I didn't prior to for a little while because I tore my Achilles. And when I tore my Achilles, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this for quite a while. Like, really couldn't do anything for almost a year and a half. It was detriment. So because of which, I started to pick it up and started to get back into it again. And now, I'm still no good, but I really enjoy it. Being able to get out there and kind of relax, especially after the weeks that we have when my phone doesn't leave my hand or my face.
Yeah.
It really is nice to be able to get out there and just kind of put my phone away as much as I can. And then lo and behold, it's also always ends up being like the times that I go golfing or the times that I get the most phone calls about work.
Yeah.
It's like, you take a day off or whenever you dedicate.
Start going on like Tuesday mornings.
Yeah, I have to start randomly doing that.
Just work late, and go early.
Every once in a while, if I can get out because we have a low schedule or a lighter schedule, or at least on paper we have a lighter schedule, or we're caught up on some things, whatever the case may be, I'm going to try to get out because I feel like it's a good mental escape.
Oh, yeah. It's
Big
great.
time for being able to relax.
That's something we talk about, not the mental piece, but just being out in Florida. That's something we talk about on the show is it's January 15th. What do you want to do today? Well, we could go to the beach, or we could go play golf, or we could go to Disney World. What is it going to be? Because
Sky's
it's like
the limit.
75 degrees outside.
Yeah.
The coldest it gets is in the 30s sometimes.
I mean, for like a day or two.
Yeah, it hardly. Yeah.
And those particular days, you're kind of like, oh, look, we actually do get weather.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, I'm going to wear this nice jacket I've had for 3 years and I've worn it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to sit by a fire because you've been excited about being able to use, an outside fireplace or something like that.
Yeah, I was talking the other day, and we said Florida gives you a much more usable year. Like there's more time in the year here because you can do whatever you want to outside.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
sense.
sense.
Problems.
I've never heard anybody like put it that way.
Yeah, it's almost like it extends you.
Yeah.
It extends your usable time.
Yeah, you don't feel trapped.
Yeah.
And when I was working for the Laser Spine Institute, one of the times that I moved out there for a promotion to start doing face-to-face consultations with spine patients, and when they moved me out there, I had never really lived in an area that got trapped with snow.
Mm-hmm. Well, my buddy lived in Nashville for a while, and he said cabin fever is a very real thing. Because everybody starts going stir crazy like late February, trying to thaw the snow, get rid of it, quit coming, quit snowing, quit being cold, because it sucks.
Well, not only that, but it also changes your mood.
Yeah.
Because everything's gray.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I'd be like, man, when is the last time that it's been a sunny day outside? Like,
well, that's
when I
what they
lived
say
St. Louis.
in Seattle, in Oregon. There's a lot of depression there, like the suicide. I don't know if this is true. I've just heard it, suicide rate's higher out there because everybody's just in the gray, dark, gloomy, misty rain.
Yep.
All the time. And
it took a toll.
yeah,
It took a toll. I
Absolutely.
would find myself in, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky, energetic, cheery guy for the most part. You know, people know me as a pretty high energy person, and I totally understand that. I like to be that person. I did catch myself several times when I was in St. Louis being like, man, I'm just in a bad mood for no reason. Yeah, I'm just crotchety. I'm just like this all the time. But it was because I hadn't seen the sun, I feel like, in like 6 days. Everything's gray nonstop. And then I would be trapped in, my apartment, not wanting to go out into the snow or, under 10 degrees. I absolutely damn sure didn't want to go drive my truck around. And slide all over like a bobsled. That was ridiculous.
Those videos are hilarious with the people that are recording a stop sign, and it's just car after car after car.
I saw that sometimes.
Crazy.
Well, because St. Louis isn't really like a area that is. It's not like a Chicago, New York, Massachusetts that's very accustomed to a lot of snow.
Right.
The cities that usually have the worst. Kind of spout of accidents and stuff are the ones that are not normally
They're
covered
not-
in snow.
Every couple years it snows a lot or something like that.
When we used to get the snow in St. Louis, it wasn't heavy snow to where it was easy to to kind of control, and they didn't have like city resources to be able to clean off the snow like really fast.
Yeah.
So it would melt and everything would be, it would harden and everything would become straight ice.
Yep. That's
So
the worst.
I feel like people, especially in Florida, see those videos of those cars sliding, and they're like, "How is it? To where in Massachusetts you see these huge
That's
snowstorms?"
a huge motivator to get people to look here.
Yep.
And this recent COVID boom, post-COVID boom, is really nothing new to us.
No.
Florida's been a destination for people since the
dawn of
40s
time.
and 50s, and when people really started coming like in droves, but it hasn't slowed down. And I think that's why Florida natives we're a rare breed. I was born and raised here, lived out of state for a year. Otherwise, I've been
Total?
right here the whole time. Yeah.
Where'd you live out of state?
North Carolina,
Oh yeah.
in Charlotte. Yeah.
How did you like Charlotte?
Charlotte itself was a city,
Okay.
but the surrounding area was awesome, amazing, beautiful. They're different up there. They got state tax in North Carolina.
Yep. I had in Missouri too.
But what I saw is that things were very nice.
Because of it.
Medians, roadways, like everything was very well put together, pretty decorated, all of that. And then not to mention, you really do get all 4 seasons in an area like that. You get a true fall, a true winter, summer. The summer I was there was brutal. They were breaking records. Like there's some major heat wave that came
Oh,
through.
really?
My dad came to see me once, and when he landed at the airport, I picked him up at like 10 o'clock at night, and on the airport thermometer sign, it said like 96 degrees at nighttime.
At night.
Not just after the sun went down, like few
Throughout
hours
the
in
night.
the night. And not a lot of people were dying during that. A lot of people, having heat strokes and stuff. And,
Heat exhaustion, heat strokes.
and it went on for like a solid week, and it would get up like 105, 106. And we don't even get that kind of heat here.
No.
It doesn't get that hot.
That was what the crazy part about St. Louis too. I feel like their summers were worse.
Yeah.
Were worse than what I'm used to and accustomed to here. Even though we obviously have a fair amount, a high amount of humidity, I felt like I was more miserable because I was used to the cold. Because you got used to the cold, blood thins out a little bit, or thickens up a little bit.
Used to wearing more clothes.
Yeah, you're used to, and then once it's hot, you are dying.
Yeah.
You are melting. And I was like, this is terrible. And then I would come to, I would visit Florida because all my friends and family base was really here. I would visit as often as I possibly could. And then I would pop right back into I'm like, man, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. I don't want to go back to St. Louis. I want to come back here. And then luckily I was able to get a promotion within the company that moved me back to Tampa. And I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Well, good.
Luckily.
So that company's not around anymore, right? It's
No.
gone.
No, the Titanic sank This particular company was an organization that was more profitable than Google at one point in time. Wow. They were just, it was a great company to work for. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely owe a lot of my experience, connections, relationships, business relationships, a lot of really great times, a lot of really great camaraderie that I felt like they were the first company I worked for that really had a full on, what's the word I'm looking for? Had like a full on,
Like a vision.
like a full vibe. Mm-hmm. Like everything within the company, they made sure to try to make sure that their employees were very happy all the time. And it's easy to do, I feel like, when the company itself is making more money. Yeah.
Right.
Like we used to have the most extravagant like Christmas parties and
Not just a pizza party from Little Caesars.
There was none of that. Yeah, that was at the very end of the once it started to get to just straight pizza parties from Hungry Howie's or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's when we know we were in trouble.
Yeah,
it's because beforehand we were doing rights. We were ordering rights. We had all kinds of stuff coming in from Moreno's and from I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
We had catering from so many local Tampa restaurants that were high end. We didn't have stuff from the Columbia. Name me another company that randomly brings in lunch for everybody.
Right.
And a sales staff of like several hundred, like not even a small amount.
Back when I was in collections, they would. Not real sure how they legally got away with it, when I think about it, but you were required to be there until the end of the month. When does the end of the month end, right? Mm-hmm. Midnight on the 30th or 31st or whatever the last day of the month is, because you go, and that's their big push. That's when they want to get all the numbers because everybody's in the habit of pushing for that end of month. Mm-hmm. And they were like fanatic. I don't even know the word. They obsessed over the end of month. And it was such a huge push. And I was always like, if you guys would just hit your goals earlier,
in the
you
month,
wouldn't literally have to be here until 1 or 2 in the morning and be getting home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning after closing up. But anyway, we all had to stay there many times till midnight, most times till like 11 o'clock. Because the time zones, you got to stop collecting at 9 p.m. It's been so long, I don't remember. 8 or 9, I think it's 9 p.m. is the cutoff. So then you turn all the phones, point them at the central time zone. And then as the clock rolls, you just keep pushing to Mountain and Pacific. And then once you get past all that, you can't call anymore. You're done. You go home. But I remember these managers running around just like frantic.
Pushing.
Get this, make this exception, do this.
Do one more.
Yeah. But what led me to that is that they did bring in awesome food on those days. So they didn't want you leaving for lunch. They didn't want anybody going to eat at your desk, stay here, go eat, get back on the phone. And it was crazy. But I didn't mind it at the time because we're all getting paid well, making good bonuses and getting the team there and like helping each other and do stuff. So it was great. But there were a bunch of us, hundreds and hundreds of people. So they'd have big catering come in and have all kinds of.
That's exactly what I was going to say about the Laser Spine Institute. Is that those nights that they were really trying to push, they basically had an incentive, especially because we were like young salespeople. A predominant amount of the people that worked in what it is that I did at that time were in their low 20s. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of that same camaraderie because people would hang out and go out partying and drinking afterwards on weekends and stuff like that. They made like a friend base, community base for having a lot of people around the same age groups that also were working very hard at the same time. So it was a really good vibe for everybody because you wanted to be very productive because you wanted to stick out in your friend group of being a top salesperson. Mm-hmm. But they did this same type of general aspect is that they would order dinner to be delivered at like 7 o'clock at night. So it's just late enough to where you would have to work all the way through it in order to be able to get it.
Yeah.
So I made it, it was a thing when I was in my low 20s of like, if I don't have to pay for dinner and I can get another dinner and I can make more money all the way up until 7 o'clock, that was good for two reasons. One, I'm saving money.
Yeah.
Two, I'm making more money. And I'm also going to, just going to go home and try to make some dinner anyways. Might as well stay here and make some more money.
enjoy being where you're at. You know, if
Absolutely.
it was a place that you hated, you run as far away as you could. As
quickly as
leave the dinner there. I'll go get McDonald's.
Exactly. I don't care if I get Taco Bell on the way home, you know?
Yeah.
But it's a smart strategy as a company.
No, it works for sure. So what led you to the real estate industry, mortgage world? What led you there?
So when the Titanic sank, and when I keep referring to that is when Laser Spine Institute went out of business, there was no heads up. I mean, the writing was kind of on the wall for those who were really, trying to get in front of it.
Paying attention.
Mm-hmm. I feel like at that particular time I was kind of wanted to look the other way because I really loved that job and I really loved that company. I didn't want to accept the fact that we were on our way to the bottom of the ocean. But when it happened, I didn't really have anything kind of lined up. I started, I tried other roles. And whenever I was working with the Laser Spine Institute and I was successful and I had money flowing, that's when I bought my first house. And that's when a friend of mine, who was also on the podcast, Tara Burley, helped me with being able to get involved with you. And she did the introduction to make sure that I knew the information necessary to understand how my benefit of having a VA loan, I could actually use it. Because at that point, I had no idea what that even meant.
Right.
How to use this VA loan. I was still under the impression, I feel like all I knew about real estate and about, the cost of buying a house was 20%.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a number that sticks. I feel like a lot of people's head that's never bought a house before.
It's the same today.
20%,
20%. It's that carryover, old school knowledge that 20% is kind of your classic standard payment, down payment.
Yep. So because of which, I didn't know that I had such a great opportunity in front of me for being able to do like a 0% down VA loan. And that's when, you kind of walked me through everything, gave me the information that was necessary. And I was like kind of blown away.
What? Really?
At how easy
it was.
At how easy it was to be able to get a VA loan
versus
completed.
What you'd be paying in rent for a comparable place,
I should have done it years before that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I feel like a lot of the feedback I get from especially from some of the veterans that I help out for their first home, that's a lot of the feedback I get is, oh, man, I should have done this a long time ago. Because the 0% down aspect of it, I could have just been paying myself instead of paying for somebody else's rent.
Yeah. And that's what we tell people over and over. We sound like broken records, but
That's true.
until you go through that and get over the hump, sometimes that falls on deaf ears because they feel like they were in your position. They just didn't know.
Yeah.
They don't have a full understanding of the way that it could go.
So once you helped me with the VA loan, I continued to work with the Laser Spine Institute. You and I had conversations every once in a while, just touching base or whatever the case may be, because I had a great experience. And then once I wasn't really happy with working in necessarily like the medical community at that particular time, I was like, you know what? Maybe I just got to switch it up entirely.
So Laser Spine folded around this time, right?
Laser Spine folded, and then I started to work for this other company called the Lung Health Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt Laser Spine Institute, Lung Health Institute, a lot of the people that went from...
They're in the same general area in there, right?
Exactly.
Got it.
Just another institute of a different body part, It's just a different college. So the transition from one to the other was within a couple of weeks, and I had known a couple of different employees, obviously from working with the Laser Spine Institute for 6 years, that went to this company, when the ship sank, and I kind of went along with that.
What am I going to do now?
Yeah,
go here.
Natural progression. Some people had already started working there prior to the Laser Spine Institute folding, and already made that transition. So I kind of probed them a little bit, asked how they liked it. They all gave me their very PC answers, and then once I started working there, I kind of realized like that wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I feel like the aspect of being able to feel like I'm helping people, like actually helping or guiding people through something, that's what makes me excited about being able to do something, is if I'm providing a service to actually help people. Mm-hmm. With that job, I would help only so much to where they had these terminal illnesses that they would eventually pass away. A lot of times, like sometimes I would call on a Thursday, I would talk with these particular patients for 6 weeks, 6 weeks, and after 6 weeks, I would call them on a Thursday and touch base with them, find out if they're still, continuously try to build rapport before we find out if they're going to move forward with the treatment. And then I would call them on Monday after the weekend, and their wife would pick up and say, yeah, it's not happening. And, they're gone. So that type of hit consistently, because that started to happen more frequent because I had a longer pipeline. I started to get real over that real fast.
Depressing.
I have an emotional connection to a lot of people, and I end up having a long time relationship with.
Yeah.
Whether it be over the phone or in person.
Right.
I connect with a lot of people. So I like to be able to do that. And I feel like it's genuinely something that I lost is not something that I'm going to be able to handle quite well.
Over and over and over and
not
over.
at a workplace.
Yeah.
If it happens to me personally, that's something that obviously everybody goes through on their outside lives, but I'm not going to choose to be in a profession where I have to deal with that consistently. Some loans die, but that's completely different from a human.
It's true.
So that's how I ended up making the transition. Once the Lung Health Institute wasn't really an option, I started kind of looking to what other options, and then you and I ended up having a long conversation, and I got recruited by High.
Yeah, that's it's a natural progression. You look for people as a business owner. You look for people who can connect with people, right? Who can be the face, who can go out and talk and win people and get them to know you and like you and end up trusting you. And, it's something to be said about being able to sit down with just about anyone and have a conversation and have a rapport, whether you're trying, you're not trying to, they're not your mark.
Yeah.
They're people who need help. I'm going to show you what I'm all about. If you don't go with me, then whatever, I'm going to find the people that I connect with and mesh with. And, you do the same thing.
I feel like, because I feel like everyone buys a house. Everyone wants to buy a house. Doesn't matter, race, age, male or female. It doesn't make a difference. Everyone's trying, to have that home that they want to be able to purchase. So why not have a type of personality be able to that can connect with any type of person? I don't feel like I have a very specific niche of people that I get along with more than others. I just feel like if you are open to have good conversation and generally a nice human being, I can get along with you.
Yeah.
Which is helpful. Big time. How did you get into the mortgage industry?
Well, I started in collections.
Collections.
So that was my first real job, corporate, actual direct deposit,
big boy job.
Not having to swing by and pick up my paycheck.
Yeah.
It was I did that I worked there for 5 years. Household was eventually bought out by HSBC, which used to have a big presence here. They're mostly in Europe and Latin America and Asia now. That's like their big footprint. They do some like high net worth, high wealth type stuff here too. Sometimes I think they have some places here for that, but they got bought out. So I started calling the 30-day people, and then I got moved over to the 60-day people.
Yep.
And then I got moved to the 90-day people, and then loss mitigation. I kind of worked my way up the delinquency ladder, and then got through. I'm
sorry, that's just a funny saying.
I
to
know
me.
it's a whole industry.
Yeah,
like it's a thing.
The delinquency ladder.
A lot of, and that's what it is. It's like each level progresses into a more problem for the company.
Yeah,
because the more that they have in delinquency, the worse their stock does. Because you don't want to have too many loans in delinquency. You need to cure those because the interest and the payments and the health of those packaged up loans is what's keeping the company afloat.
Yeah.
So that's when the financial crisis hit and the meltdown happened. Delinquencies were out of control, and that's what killed them.
Yeah.
What killed all those banks. So anyway, I've kind of stumbled my way into analytics around that time because I found out that I had a penchant for spreadsheets and data. So I started to used that in my job, and then that got noticed and got me plucked out from the phone and put into a business advisor, business analyst role.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of worked MIS, information systems, data analyst, for the business analyst for the company. So it wasn't like some kind of coding job or anything like that. It was, hey, I know how this business works. I know what your reports need to look like. I can build those reports and then feed the whole company with what we need to do. So that's what got me into the analytic piece of it.
Very type A personality, perfect situation for you.
Yeah, I guess so.
The analytics aspect of it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Controlling of the numbers and data.
Yep, seeing it all. So then one of my buddies got out of the collection side, default side, and went over into underwriting. And that really shined a light on origination and the front end of when these loans start. Like I started as we were taking them away, right? Until we were getting them into foreclosure or working them out. Like I come in, I start my career in the midstream of like this mortgage already exists. So in my mind, everybody has a mortgage, they've got,
Makes sense.
Everybody's got a loan payment. So never really gave too much thought about how they got it or who gave it to them or what they did to qualify or any of that kind of stuff.
You're just already a part of a
I'm
different
just in it. I'm
step
getting
of
your
the
payment.
process.
Right. That's all I'm concerned with. So I start hearing about underwriting and seeing what's happening there. So I decide, hey, I can do this. I can figure this stuff out. So I went and changed positions in the company. And I'm grateful and blessed to have started there because they did a really good job of taking care of their employees and hiring from within and letting people kind of move around and learn and do things. They were really, they should get a lot of credit for that. And I've got friends today that I knew back then, 22 years ago now. That's when it's coming about that time.
Wow.
And it was like drinking from a fire hose. Like I got so much knowledge there. And so when I started underwriting, we were going through, we only underwrote closed loans because we underwrote for the credit line that was, so basically we had what we called sellers, and they were smaller mortgage companies, and we would give them warehouse lines. We'd give them $10 million or $100 million or whatever, and they would go out and they'd run their whole entire operation on the credit line that they took from us. And then when they'd close the loan, they'd fund it, they'd go through all the closing and post-closing and all that, and they would deliver us back a full loan package with all the origination stuff and all of the closing and post-closing and compliance and audit and everything at the end.
So you got to see all of that.
I saw all of it. And it was our job as underwriters to go in and fill out what we call the due diligence worksheet, which was a big legal sized thing with a bunch of boxes and check marks and little places for calculations and numbers to fill in. And so it was literally on paper. Like we all had computers, like email computers, internet, all that stuff, but they were the big CRT monitors,
Giant,
not the little paper thin monitors we have today, but they were, we'd have to run that whole sheet. So I saw origination. I saw what they made, what kind of money they had, their down payments, what they were doing for work, all that stuff, their credit reports, their scores, their trade lines, collections, other mortgages, all that stuff. And then on the other side of the file was all the post-closing stuff. So you'd review that the note's accurate, the percentage is right, the addresses are right. You go through all these check marks to make sure everything fits the box. And then the first thing in there was the HUD 1, which is the old settlement statement. We don't use it anymore in QM world. So I was seeing all of these commissions, like loan officers.
Making crazy money.
This is pre-2006, right?
Okay, this is before.
So this is before everything melted down. So loan officer compensation was out of control at that time.
What were the percentages back then?
It was common to see 3 on the front and 3 on the back. Yeah. So you could pull 6 points off of a loan. And then the realtor commissions, haven't really changed much, but those were 3 and 3.5%, 2%, 2.5%, or whatever.
Yeah, but I had no idea. Still had no idea even though I've been doing this for several years now. I had no idea that back then it was 6% potentially on the front and the back.
Yeah, they're making tons of money.
That is crazy.
money
And
back then.
totally makes sense as to why it is that everybody got so greedy with stated income and stated assets.
It was definitely a component.
That's for sure.
Yeah. It wasn't the sole purpose, but it was a component.
Wow.
So I'm seeing all this stuff come through, and I'm like, I was underwriter for about 2 years, and I'd travel a little bit. I'd go to these sellers and kind of be in their offices and see what they do.
Yeah.
And like I see them originating and doing loans, and we got to a point where I was like, I think I can be a real estate agent, because I wasn't even thinking loans at the time. I was like, these realtors are doing a really good job out here, and I've got all this background. I've got years of information that I can just download into this new job right now. And so, yeah, I became a realtor, and this was about 2004. And I was, working with coworkers, friends, had some outside clients, but I maintained my day job for a little while. And then the real estate job career started to overtake the day job. And I never been so nervous in my life to leave and
A real job.
leave my W-2 paycheck and
The guaranteed.
go in 401k and health insurance and all the stuff that comes along with a good employer. I remember for like a month, I just had these weird butterflies in my stomach all the time. Anytime that thought came in my head, my stomach would turn.
Scary.
And I'm not generally anxious or stressed out or like worried about a lot of stuff. That's really one time in my life where I felt like, man, this is going to be a huge jump. Like, this is going to be something completely different, because that was also my first real job at that company. So I'd never been between jobs. I'd never gone and found another job. They were my people. I was under their umbrella for so long that I felt really nervous about stepping out. But eventually I did it. Stepped out, went full time, and then lasted about 2 years in real estate. And then as the meltdown started, I couldn't tell what was going on. Like, nobody had a crystal ball. Nobody could tell what's going to happen here. I wound up with like 20 listings, and I couldn't sell any of them because the whole neighborhood's for sale at this point. You can pull up old news articles, and they're taking pictures in the neighborhood, and 80% of the houses down the road have a for sale sign in them. So good luck being a listing agent at that time and like trying to move inventory. So I abandoned it. I was like, okay, well, I'm leaving. I'm going to go back to loans. Idiot. Why are you going to do that?
Why do you think one is working right now and the other one's not?
And so I was like, okay, well, then that's when I moved to Charlotte. I got a job with a company up there, Sendera Funding, and they were eventually bought out by Goldman Sachs. And while I was at Sendera was when everything the sky started to fall. And all the subprime stuff was getting axed out of people's product offerings. And then the Alt-A, what we called it, like the cleaner subprime, was starting to get chopped. And it all basically all these banks were failing. The implodometer on the website, you'd check that every day and see a competitor going down. And we're like, this is not good. Like,
anyone who doesn't know what all these terms mean, watch the movie The Big Short.
Oh yeah, they sum it up very.
The movie was awesome
for the type of production that it was, like Hollywood.
Pretty accurate.
Pretty good representation.
I remember the first time I saw that movie, I didn't know half of the terms that they were talking about. The A paper. Double A, double A,
It's
triple
funny
A.
because Sendera, they had Goldman Sachs money.
Yeah.
They had Goldman backing, so they were safe from being completely shut down. But all the salespeople that were there, I had 3 really good months there because I got ramped up and I started killing it for like 3 months, and then everything started to fall and all of us went down. Like I remember they took all of our salespeople and cut us into thirds. And they ranked us by volume and cut us into thirds. And they said the top third, we're going to pay a guarantee for the next 3 months, so you'll stay here. The middle third, we're going to pay like 25% of that guarantee. And the lower third, you're done.
You're fired.
You're not here anymore.
First place, set of steak knives. Second place, you're fired.
And it was real. That that bottom third thing is true. I mean, a lot of businesses rank and fire like that. That's a thing for them, but that happened. And so I held on longer because I had that guarantee. But in the meantime, I relocated back to Florida. I was going to be the outside sales executive, account executive, instead of inside like I was. And luckily, I got here and settled, and then all the products were gone. And now we were an FHA lender. And I'm like, what's FHA? How do you do FHA loans? And I just didn't stick around. I went back to default because the bubble shifted. It went from originations to where all the work is to now
everyone's defaulting.
Now it's moved over into default. Hey, I've got default experience. I've got analytic experience. Like I'm back, maybe. And I went in and I was able. Thankfully, I'm grateful for them again. HSBC. I went back to work there. I got rehired, and now I was calling people that were 9 months late on their loans and trying to set up
9 months.
You know what?
Because
the
back
craziest
then
thing?
they had so many people that were so far delinquent, they
And
didn't
we
even have
had
time to be able to kick them out.
Collectors have what they call a queue, and it's your assigned accounts, and they take a beginning of month snapshot of what's in there, what's owed, the balances, and then they take an end of month snapshot, and whatever you were able to move out of that, that's how they calculated your bonus and your quality of, your output, basically. Yep. So, but we had each collector had like 2,500 accounts in their queue.
2,500 per person?
And we had a month to work through it and figure something out.
You better do over 100 a day.
And we had hundreds of collectors. It wasn't just like 4 people sitting there in a little room.
Yeah.
It was a call center.
It wasn't a
cubicles
staffing problem.
Exactly. And talk about it. I mean, you know what was crazy? My old collector people will get a kick out of this. You'd have to call somebody up, and you had to they got you on a script, so they tried to turn everybody into robots. And when we were all successful prior, we all had our own personalities and our own way of talking to people, and it was very unique and individual. And those people, if you found the good ones, they'd move a lot more money for you than the people just reading off a script.
Yes.
But when HSBC bought it, they implemented a call model, and it was a flow chart, a big old ugly complicated flow chart with lines and X's and go here, and if this happens, go here. And the opening line was like, "Hey, this is Josh calling from HSBC. I'm calling about your account at so-and-so address. Just to let you know, this is an attempt to collect a debt by a debt collector, and this call may be monitored for quality assurance. I'm calling about your past due amount of $47,233. Can you pay that today?"
That's how they wanted you to start?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great way
I'm calling you about your $50,000. Can you pay that today? And these are people that are 9 months past due.
100%.
So this is not their first phone call.
I know you haven't paid in a while. Can you pay for a Mercedes today?
No. When can you pay that?
No.
That's the next question. How much can you pay today?
Do you have the ability to be able to put on a Honda Accord on your credit card right now?
Mm-hmm.
Get out of here.
That's how you had to open every single call. And if you didn't do it, you got dinged. And if you got dinged so many times, you got kicked out. So anybody, it just turned into like the drudgery of like cubicle work, because you know that you don't have any control over anything at that point. You're just there doing what they want you to do, pushing the buttons. I felt like it was like one of those movies where they're just sitting in a cubicle over and over and it's doing the same thing.
Have you seen my stapler?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was similar at Laser Spine Institute too, because when I first got there, it was kind of like anything goes. You can, however you're going to be able to
all
connect.
Legal. It was all legal, nothing shady. They just didn't put you in a box. They hired you to do that job.
I wasn't doing anything or saying anything that was, incorrect.
Yeah.
Or was too much, creating too many, like rainbows and butterflies for, setting the right expectations for people were always important, but they didn't necessarily go to script. After I started doing consultations and doing face-to-face stuff, which also had its own completely different model.
Yeah.
Then they took all of the people that were on the phone and put them on a script. And that's when a lot of times, the productivity went kind of down.
Yeah.
When I was on there, this is kind of a side story, but it ends up being kind of fun. Like, this is the type of atmosphere that we had in this job, is the fact that my particular team used to have a chart of different sayings that you could say, like, bread and butter, the hobo on a ham sandwich, shack in the paint, all these particular types of like different, like random hilarious sayings. And we had a tally of how many times you can incorporate those sayings into your conversations with patients in like a positive way, right? It wasn't something that we were trying to, completely ruin the conversation and not build rapport with people, but those particular sayings would make people laugh.
Meow, that's a good idea.
Exactly. That type of stuff like that. So it was always a game to try to see how many times you could make your patients laugh in a very serious conversation about spine surgery. So it made a lot more of a playful atmosphere, and we were selling left and right. I mean, we used to have these big gongs, and every time that you used to sell a surgery or book a surgery, you'd ring the gong, or you spin a prize wheel or something like that.
We had
It made a really fun atmosphere.
my old sales manager, he had some big speakers plugged into his computer, and anytime a loan came in, like we get a new loan package from a broker we were calling on, he would let you come over and tell him what iTunes song you wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And this is back when iTunes had like 15-second previews on their thing. You double click it. If you didn't own the song, you'd have to buy the song to hear it all, but it'd give you the 15-second.
Oh my gosh, I remember those
And
days.
he would go and just play that over the speakers, so it was constantly same kind of environment.
What was your song?
I had a bunch of songs.
Do you remember like a specific one? Was like,
Ludacris,
that's my jam.
Move,
You was some Luda, huh?
Hendrix, Fire.
Okay.
We all had our different ones.
I love that.
Yeah, that was fun. So then I left HSBC, and because I think I spent another year there, and it was such a different environment though, because HSBC was in charge now. So now we were a bank, and before we were a finance company, basically. So a lot of compliance, a lot of remote, headquarters now in London, and it was just a totally different landscape. So the movement was squashed. Like people, you couldn't just hop out and go somewhere else in there anymore. It was it was tough. They're gone now. They dismantled that whole thing. So it was on the decline at that time
Already.
but now they're gone. But so I wound up going over to a special servicer in Tampa called Quantum Servicing, and I knew some people in and out of there that had been with me at other companies, and it was like one of those natural kind of progression things.
Yeah.
This is okay. Well, here's where I can go. So I started over there, a lot more responsibility, a lot less call structure, like the way that they did things with the call model. And that worked out a lot better. And eventually got promoted a few times there and just kind of ran all the way up through that, and then left them. And then I had a short stint at JP Morgan Chase, as a business analyst again. And when I talk about loans being at big institutions and big banks, it's scary, like how disorganized these big operations are, and how sloppily they're ran. And like, there's so much going on that not one person or team or manager or group or department or business unit can catch it all.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it grows to this scale that it's too big to fail.
Yeah.
The whole thing with the meltdown, and now it's in the news again. Like, they've just got so much going on that it doesn't really matter how clean they do it.
It's just the fact that there's so much going on. It's going to cover.
It doesn't matter. They'll be fine. So I saw that firsthand. Like, this place is
Does that kind of
bonkers.
scare you?
It does a little bit. Yeah. Like,
Does it still scare you as like a consumer, and not even being directly in the middle of it, but those? I mean, I'm sure.
Well,
over the course of time, they probably tied it up a little bit. You think?
Maybe, I don't know. But I also think that if you're out selling hot dogs in a stadium and you drop a couple hot dogs here and there, it's not going to be the end of your business. That's kind of like the same thing, right? They're sloshing all this stuff around, and it's just so massive and big that my brain can't comprehend trillions of dollars or multi-high hundreds of billions of dollars. When I look, I can't comprehend. Nobody can. Like when you think about minutes and hours and how many million hours, I got these scales just blow your mind.
Yeah.
So maybe it's acceptable that they slosh some stuff around and ruin some stuff every now and then. So for my company and my business, that's absolutely a straight way to go out of business quickly.
Yeah, because you're not having accesses of high billions or low trillions of dollars.
So then in 2013, this is 13 years in, then my son was born. And I took off for 2 years, stayed home with him and kind of got him going and got him up and moving. And then went back to work with my buddy at his mortgage company and started as helping him out with some processing and then getting my license and jumping back into the origination side.
Yeah.
So since about 2013, about 20 into 2014 is when I got licensed and got right back into it, got going again. So, and then 2018, I worked at his company until 2018, and then I opened this one in middle 2018, and I've been here ever since.
What do you think the hardest part has been for you as a broker owner, coming from like not being the person who owns the company to being the owner? Like, what is the biggest jump that you feel like, or the most difficult task that you've had switching from being an originator to the man?
Well, I feel like there's not much difference between the two because as an originator, I was 100% commission and nobody was bringing me anything. I had to go get it and go find it and go make my way as a salesperson or, business owner, really. Yeah. I mean, to call yourself whatever. I mean, if you get 100% commission and you're business owner at that point, your own business, your personal business. So
and if you don't bring it,
it's not coming any other way.
It's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I've had some months where I'm like, oh boy, I need to step it up a bit.
And I think it's the same thing. It's just on a different scale.
Yeah.
The numbers just evolve. It's the same. The percentages might be close, but the actual numbers wind up being bigger and different. So
that makes sense.
And, just keeping your hands on everything too, and trying not to give away too much responsibility to where I'm not in the middle of it and kind of catching problems and making things better and revising processes and making sure that our customers are seen and heard and taken care of and with a good customer service, and our real estate partners, making sure that they're taken care of and we're doing right by them and helping them do things.
Because that's a different aspect to it altogether, is the relationships with real estate, with realtors.
Well, I've told people before, this sounds a lot worse than it really is, but our end client is really kind of our secondary client.
Yeah.
The primary client is our real estate agents.
Our realtors, yeah.
That's who we're here to serve and take care of and plug into and help and be a resource for, because they're the ones that have the opportunities and the buyers. People don't call us first when it comes to getting a house.
And I don't think that a lot of people really realize that, is the fact that in the mortgage industry, your direct to buyer doesn't happen very often.
Well, we can't afford to play in that playground.
No,
because
it would cost too much money.
Quicken and Rocket Mortgage and
all these mailers and things that go out
companies.
about, can you refinance, and anything directly to the buyers or directly to, consumer from a mortgage company is going to cost a lot of money to be able to do so.
Yeah,
but if you can build some good relationships with real estate agents, then you can have repetitive business coming from them once you develop a rapport, a relationship, and prove to the real estate agent that you're not going to screw up their business. Because nobody's going to trust you if you start messing with people's pockets.
Yeah, and it's a different dynamic when it's all local, too, because I genuinely care about my agent's business and their closing and their experience that they're having with their client and us and me to them. And I want everybody to be happy.
Yep.
And I have a reputation to protect.
Absolutely.
So if something goes wrong and I just flip up both fingers and run the other way, that's going to come back to haunt me.
Yep.
But if I'm sitting in a call center in Detroit somewhere and I mess up, Karen's
loan or
loan down
whatever the
here
case.
in Tampa,
No big deal.
and this
Never
real
gonna
estate
see 'em.
agent's mad at me, whatever. I'll just open up my next email from the guy who texted us from the gas pump because they saw the Quicken ad there.
Yeah, it's very different when every particular loan matters with keeping the clientele of that real estate agent.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you screw up once or have a really bad experience, or somebody just really comes at the real estate agent talking about how terrible of a recommendation that particular loan officer is, you'll probably never get business from them again.
Yeah.
You're just shutting off another valve for your own income and for a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also another thing, is like also having so many different real estate agents that you can be relatively close with. Because sometimes too many open valves, you're going to start having leaks.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a constant battle that some real estate agents or some loan officers don't get as close as I particularly do with my realtors, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like to be, pretty close with continuous calls, text messages, involved in their Facebooks and their Instagrams, and staying present, staying relative.
Just be there, be around.
Yeah.
You're not going to bug them, but when you need me, I'm here.
If I can entertain you a little bit and tell you a funny story about something that happened with one of my buyers or one of my borrowers or whatever the case, and keep you entertained, then great.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to make sure that I'm relevant at all times, which is part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we may seem that maybe that's where the sales skills kick in, is to the realtor relationship, right? Instead of the borrower. Because when we get to the borrower, I feel like we're consultants now, and we're like professional advisors. When we're to the agents, it's, hey, what are you doing? Check out what we've got here. Let me help you so you can go sell this. Let me show you how to do this. Let me teach you how to do this. Let me show you different ways you didn't think about. Let me tell you about this product. Have you considered, we're just there to help with ideas and help keep them motivated.
And I feel like that takes two different hats, right? I feel like the person I am with the real estate agent is a very different person than who I am with the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Buyer is very business oriented, very professional, at least until they start to bring down barriers as to who their personality is. You're not going to see me start popping off with jokes left and right, and try to make a buyer that I just got on the phone with laugh.
Yeah,
real
because
hard.
who knows what they're dealing with?
Because you don't know.
You're not ready for that.
If they're very analytical and not looking for a buddy, you can turn off that relationship quite quick, and they don't trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So my relationships with my real estate agents, they know my true personality. I'm kind of myself all the time, and I'm a goofball constantly, and I try to keep that as fun as possible with those serious conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's like working in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You're different when the server comes out, but when you're back in the kitchen, it's a fun time. Everybody's hanging out, and
it's exactly
friendly.
how it is. You got to be able to switch those hats, and if you can't do that, then you're going to have a tough time being able to both keep relationships with the real estate agents and keep the business interested from your clients that are actually using you as your loan officer.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about your team structure? And you can elaborate on from the beginning to end if you want.
Of course. So originally when I started with being an originator, I was kind of doing everything myself, and coming into a completely different industry and not knowing the ins and outs of it yet and learning as I went, I started to realize quite quickly how much goes into being a loan originator. I mean, there are so many different things that you have to keep a finger on all the time. And it's a difficult profession. It really is. And I found that out very quickly that, there's a lot more of an analytical side to it.
It takes both sides of your brain.
Yes.
Some jobs are all right brain, some are all left brain, but we need both functioning all the time.
All the time.
It's
all the
different.
time. You got to turn on the personality hat, then you got to go, pop into a computer and turn on the analytical side and be good with those numbers so that the information that you're giving to your clients are actually going to be accurate. Because the second that they start to poke holes in a 1003 or in a some type of LE that you send to them or a quote that you send to them, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
You're done. If you have somebody that can Google something and make you look dumb, you're done. It's not going to happen. So because of which, I started to realize that I was a lot better with personal conversations, one-on-one explaining things, how loan products work, what particular type of down payments, how to kind of go around certain obstacles that might be in people's way of being able to purchase a home. And I wasn't the best at the analytical side. I wasn't the best on the computer side for follow-up emails. Document chasing is the bane of my existence. It's just not something that I consider myself being able to be good at and being able to really focus on. And that's a huge part of the job. So we had another loan officer start at Swift. His name is Robert Filliger. And Robert's kind of a computer guru. He's really good with numbers. He's really good on the computer. He's fast about being able to get quotes and pre-approvals. And obviously that took time for him to be able to get to that point, and he's getting better as he continues to grow as a loan officer himself. Mm-hmm. But when we were separate in our own entities of loan officers, I had a lot of people that I knew and relationships that I knew, and he knew how to do a lot of the loan officer stuff. But moving from an area that wasn't, he didn't grow up here, so he didn't have a lot of these connections and things like that. So he didn't really have all those connections that were going to help him being able to get his business off the ground. Mm-hmm. So we ended up having a conversation about how I feel like we are ultimately good together of what you're really good at and what I'm really good at. And together we would make a really, really good loan officer as a whole.
Right.
But why not do it as a team? Why not do it to where I'll have a lot of the one-on-one conversations? I'll be the outgoing, go to marketing stuff, do the podcast stuff, do the brokerage presentations, keep all our business relationships with text messages and Instagram and Facebook and all of these touch points that we have with our clients, which is our real estate agents. Mm-hmm. And then you service the people that they end up sending in to us for getting pre-approvals, chasing down documents, making sure we're updated with numbers, people get quotes, checking our emails for the most part to make sure there's no cracks lost. Nothing falls through the cracks. Mm-hmm. So because of which, we've actually kind of turned it into a pretty successful way of being able to look at it. And I'll tell you, our realtors that we work with, our realtors love it.
Yeah.
They really do enjoy it.
Hopefully they appreciate the fact that there's two sets of eyeballs.
Yeah.
And one of you is always going to be in tune or available, or can you do this? If I can't get you, I'll get you. And then you're there, and it's like, that's a good thing.
Since we have started this podcast, I've gotten 4 different phone calls from 4 different realtors, and I know that every one of those realtors called Robbie as soon as I didn't pick up the phone, mm-hmm. and I know he answered the phone. Yeah. I'm not worried about it because I know that it's something else, another touch point that they can have. And I was just doing a broker presentation literally yesterday. I went into Century 21 Beggins in Brandon, and I did a presentation on VA loans. And as I was talking to some of the partners that we've had in there, one of them bragged about the fact that you get a 2-for-1 discount. And I love that, in the aspect of knowing that you have somebody available. If I'm on vacation, that's a lot of times the feedback we get from realtors is the fact that the communication between my loan officer and I is not that great.
Yeah.
They don't answer phone calls after a certain time. They don't text message me back right away. They don't return my emails within 24, 48 hours, whatever the case. They don't have a good relationship with my buyer. My buyer doesn't necessarily trust them, or they're very short with my buyer, so they don't really feel as if they have a lot of personality.
And these are all things that I've heard in my conversations, and you're hearing the same thing. So
exactly.
It's all of those statements are very repeatable across the market.
So this allows us then for me to be more of the personalized touch, one-on-one conversations, taking my time with explaining how these loan products work. When we come into hurdles or things that are going to trip us up for being able to get a pre-approval, I can slowly break down how to overcome it and be able to take my time on the phone while he's knocking out other numbers and other things. My conversations are not rushed. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing that buyers really appreciate is the fact that I'll take whatever time that I need to be able to walk you through the problems that are in front of us, which is great.
Yeah.
People all the time say, I can't believe you just spoke with me for an hour and a half at 7:30 at night. You know what I mean? And sometimes that has happened. Does all of that grow fruit? Does every person that I take an hour and a half with end up getting a loan? No. But the realtor remembers.
Mm-hmm.
The realtor remembers the fact that I brought so much time and effort into trying to be there for their buyer. So then the next time they actually have a qualified buyer, a lot of times they send it right back to us.
Yeah.
And that's what we are building with a lot of these partners, is a relationship of knowing that we care just like they care. Because if they don't feel like they have somebody that's going to care about their buyers and closing on deals, then they don't feel like they're part of our team.
Mm-hmm.
We have great processors. We have an office manager that's always available. People love Katie. People love Allie. People love the fact that they can call me, they can call Robert, they can call Katie, or they can call Allie pretty much any time throughout the day, and we're going to be able to get you answers.
Yeah. And, I think the proactive, I don't like inbound phone calls.
Mm-mm.
I don't want people calling us.
Mm-mm.
I want to call them, tell them what's up, give them the answer their questions, and then send them on their way and take care of everything.
You know what's actually helped me the most with that, with the inbound call aspect of it, is the videos that we did for the step-by-step.
Mm-hmm.
So every time that we, just for those who have never used this or whatever the case may be, every time that we get to a new step of the process,
Milestone.
Every milestone, essentially. Every single milestone, we've already generated a video that goes directly out to people's emails and says, "Hi, you've now completed this milestone. Congratulations. This is what's the next milestone. This is what it entails. This is what to keep an eye out for. And the next time you complete that milestone, we'll send you another video."
Mm-hmm.
I get feedback from that from both buyers and realtors, because we also send it to their real estate agents all the time.
Yeah.
They're like, I got your video.
It's very
I loved
effective.
it. And I'm like, which one are you talking about? Because there's 11 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So which one are you talking about this time? I don't even have to worry about fielding the incoming calls of like, what do I do now? What do I do now? Because in the videos, I'm already telling them.
Yeah.
Because it's the same process.
That touches, we're obviously we're big into video here. Yeah. Been doing video since like pretty much the same time I've been doing loans, really.
It's the way of the future.
Yeah. And I mean, we're in the future because I've been saying that since 2015. And that's one of those aspects of video marketing that you can put into your business that's a tool for your business and your processes, not just marketing. And, when we do our video marketing classes and stuff, I give people examples of how can you use video.
Yeah.
You don't have, every video doesn't have to be a YouTube video or has to be a, Instagram reel.
Or TikTok.
It doesn't, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what else do you have?
Yep.
How do you communicate with your past clients? How do you communicate with your current prospective buyers? How do you communicate with even your team if you're a team leader? And it's so hard to wrangle 10 or 15 agents in the same room for more than a few minutes because they're all doing stuff. So how do you communicate and how do you stay present with them and, and the people that you deal with? Those privately shared videos, I think, are huge and super impactful because those videos are helping push your business forward and push that process along. And that's exactly why we designed them like that, is to say, here's what just happened. This is what's about to happen.
Yep.
And then we'll go from there.
And all it is that small little touch point,
Mhm.
and it stops so much of your business from continuously calling you all day long.
Yeah, because we're doing, and add to that the weekly call out saying, here's where we are.
Yep.
By the way, you're going to get these videos as things happen, but here's where we are from person to person, everything going okay for you.
And it has helped me not have to be able to field those calls. Like it really is the definition of working smarter, not harder. I did all of those videos in one day.
Yeah.
And they have stopped probably hundreds of incoming calls from where are we? What are we doing in the where's my loan?
Yeah.
What's part of the process? What else do you guys need from me? A lot of these things are already answered in these emails that people get nonstop, as long as you can set the right expectation.
Yeah.
If you can set the right expectations at the very beginning of the call, which also helps with taking your time with having these initial calls with people, with building a rapport and letting them know you're going to get a video at every step throughout the process once we go under contract, that really did help.
Mm-hmm.
And then they literally love to tell me that they love the videos.
Yeah.
They love it.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of people pay attention to them, and you can see the view counts on them. Like they're being watched.
Yeah.
You know, they're being seen, and the whole things are being watched. And they're not long. They're like a minute, 2
Yeah.
minutes. Just it's like I tell people, pretend like you're leaving a voicemail, instead you're just talking to a camera.
Yep.
That's the only difference. So yeah, that's very very effective. So you guys, Robbie and David, you're the Rad Team.
The Rad Team.
Excellent name. So that's how they can reach you, radteam@swifthm.com when they need you.
Yeah, and a lot of people will still email me. All of my emails
Yeah.
automatically forward to our group so that Robbie doesn't miss out on anything.
Yeah.
Because he's predominantly the person who's answering the emails and replying back. But
Well,
we
I
talk
think
all day long about who emails us, whatever the case may be.
Any loan officer, realtor, agency type person, salesperson in general, all face that exact problem.
Yep.
They say, you get too much on your plate and your prospecting falls away. And now you're not generating new business. And because you got to take care of the business that you brought in. So that puts you on that yo-yo effect on a chart where you close a lot, then you fail, then you close a lot, then you fail. And every one of those people deal with that. But when you're able to split it off and build a team behind you to help you stay consistent, that says so much. You can spread your wings so much more and get breathing room, because if you're focused on one thing and the next person's focused on the next thing, all you have to do is focus on that one thing, which is generating business and talking to realtors and all that.
I feel bad sometimes when I hit Robert with 5 leads at the same time. You know what I mean? I'm like, sorry, I know the amount of work that goes into, generating and starting 5 pre-approvals, like real quick. Some of them are not going to pan out.
Right.
You can get 5 leads and 2 of them can be non-qualified buyers at this time, but you still want to be able to take care of the conversation of talking about how to get them to qualified buyers. So I still don't even try to rush that. So when people have people that they know their credit score is not passable, 500 credit scores or whatever the case may be, like real out there circumstances of I'm trying to buy in a year, a lot of loan officers won't feel that call. A lot of loan officers are like, if you're not ready to go, I'm really not going to spend my time, because of the fact that I have the emailing and the document chasing and all these other things that
it's going to be a lot of
directly tie
resource
into it.
management on their part.
But because of the fact that I've got Robbie, I'll field every call.
And that helps you get a longer pipeline, longer relationships, longer, timeline of being able to get people over their hump into their house.
Yeah. And we're not going to set unrealistic expectations of thinking that every person's a buyer, because they're not. Every person might need some additional steps before they become that. But if they don't know, then they're never going to turn into business for you.
Right. You have to. There's a lot of nurturing that has to happen.
A lot.
For a lot of people.
Of hand-holding.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. Well, hey, why don't we crack into the goodies that you brought and take a minute, and then when we come back, we're going to get into headlines.
That sounds great.
All right. Hey, thanks for bringing the drinks.
Of course.
Nice. What is in there?
So we got some 4 Roses bourbon. Oh, man.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Almost knocked myself out there. 4 Roses bourbon.
There we go. Cheers.
That's some of my favorite stuff.
Delicious. All right, so we are getting into the next segment of the podcast.
Absolutely.
We're going to come up with a unique name and call it Headlines.
I like it. So unique of you.
So I just went in here and I Googled Florida real estate news.
Okay.
Let's see what they say. Fox Business 6 days ago is talking about Florida's red hot real estate market cooling down. Gone are the days of bidding wars, the broker says. So let's look at that for a minute. What else do we have here? Strength or conflict of interest. Florida lawmakers' real estate ties spark debate. So we have a lawmaker who is an agent, and he's probably doing something shady. You think?
Sounds like it.
We'll find out. Local rent control banned in Florida's new affordable housing law. Let's jump in there.
What was the headline again?
Local rent control banned in Florida's new affordable housing law. What are we saying here? Chris
Rent
Gollin
control.
out of Tallahassee, Florida, largest ever support for housing in state history. That's what Governor Ron DeSantis called Senate Bill 102 when he signed it into law on Wednesday. He certainly corrected it. It's an ambitious initiative, but though it passed the legislature and received the governor's signature, some fear Florida's housing crisis is still not yet adequately addressed, or rather that the sections of SB 102 give the ball to the wrong players. Chief function here is to devote $711 million of state funds into affordable housing initiatives over the next decade. An unprecedented expenditure. It also provides government incentives to developers who undertake affordable housing projects. But where it loses some is that it bans any rent control measures by local governments, something that many Floridians have pushed for at the city and county levels in recent years. So rent control, the way I understand it, is like New York, I think, has rent control. And you live in an apartment and your landlord can't raise the rent more than a certain percentage a year or something like that.
Over
I
the
don't know
course
the
of time.
full details because I never had to deal with it, but that's typically basically what that is. So this bill is saying that we're going to not let local municipalities enact any local rent control laws, which you can look at both ways.
I was going to say, you
From
can
a
definitely see
capitalist
that both ways.
landlord investor perspective, get that rent control out of here.
Yeah.
I want market rent. I want what the market will bear. But from the struggling family who has a problem with income
Yep.
in affording a house, they need help. So
It also, I mean, it's also interesting or a different perspective of thinking of like from the loan officer perspective, it is going to force a lot of people to looking into purchasing
could be.
because of the aspect of thinking that, people already know and already come to us a lot and go, I can't believe how high my rent is. Can't believe that they're trying to charge this amount for just this. It's always that.
Yeah.
It's always, can you believe that it's this amount for just this small amount of, 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom, 1-bath or whatever the case may be? That's the constant, message that I hear from people that are trying to persuade or trying to find out how they can purchase a home.
Yeah. And every realtor and loan originator all has some kind of go-to rent versus own,
Of
either
course.
presentation or bullet points that they can get into.
Absolutely.
Huge talking point for our industry. So that's interesting. So that's something happening up there in Tallahassee.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting
I feel like
headline.
we don't really deal with too many rent control places around here. I've never run across it myself,
No.
so I'm not educated enough to know if that's even going on anywhere.
And really dive into it, because if people are renting, that usually means they're not talking to us.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Oh, sweet nectar of the gods.
Oh, okay. Well, we can only read that if we subscribe, so guess I'm not. And this one has a server error. Come on, Google.
Get with me here.
Here's one. This sounds like a deadly headline. 7 Florida cities that could be heading for a housing crisis.
You got to hit a scary sound effect with that. You got to do that in the demon voice.
7 Florida cities that could be headed for a housing crisis.
Christ.
They should have never given me this thing.
No, absolutely not.
I've tried to be tame with it because it could get out of hand real fast.
with just the headphones.
I like to leave voicemails in that voice.
Exactly. That's how we. What if you were one of your debt creditor collections?
Yeah.
And that's how you used to call customers. This is a chance to collect a debt.
Florida seems to be a state that people are always flocking to and never leaving, with its temperate weather, great beaches, and lots of excellent attractions. However, even Florida is feeling the results of market forces, which are increasing mortgage rates, driving up home prices, and thus driving out people. In fact, the Florida cities on this list are showing alarming signs that could be pointing towards a housing crisis. In order to find the Florida cities showing cause for concern, Go Banking Rates looked at the largest 200 cities in terms of total housing units and some crucial factors such as the percentage of mortgages that are between 30 and 90 plus days delinquent. and homeowner and renter vacancy rates. Data was drawn from the CFPB, the CPB, and Realty Check. That's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is our regulator.
Yep.
And the Consumer Protection Bureau and Realty Check. Here are 7 most likely to end up with a housing crisis. Number 7, Pembroke Pines, South Florida. Percentage of mortgages delinquent 90 days, 0.7. Hollywood, Florida. Homeowner vacancy rate, homeowner vacancy rate in Pembroke Pines, 0.9. Delinquent mortgages 90 days plus, 0.7. That's nothing.
0.7 is not bad.
Hollywood, Florida. Vacancy rate, 1.6. Delinquency, 0.6. This is I don't know about this go banking rates. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Jacksonville, Florida. Homeowner vacancy, 2%.
What's the delinquency rate on number 1?
0.6. So let me just, Jacksonville, Miami, Gainesville, Fort Lauderdale, and Orlando. They're all
Orlando would be a big deal.
0.7 is the lowest percentage of this whole entire list.
What's the highest percentage of delinquency rate?
That's what I meant to
Oh,
say.
the highest is the highest.
0.7, yeah. Orlando's home vacancy rate. So they're saying that 5% of the properties in Orlando are vacant. I wonder how deep they dive into second homes and VRBOs. And
That's what I was going to say.
vacation rentals and things like that. Because
It doesn't scream crisis. That screams that a lot of people are using investment properties and secondary homes to be able to go to Disney World as often as
to
possible.
me, this screams clickbait. Go banking rates. I don't know about that article.
We're on to you. Go banking
Yeah,
rates.
I'm not going to let that go. So the other ones that I wanted to talk about is the Case-Shiller S&P Case-Shiller index came out recently, and that Case-Shiller, what it does is it looks at it's an index of housing activity, talking about property appreciation. Is it going up, down? What's it doing? Is very focused on in the industry. Case-Shiller is a big number. So what we're hearing here is home prices cool in January, even falling in some cities. Case-Shiller says home prices cooled in January, up only 3.8% nationally than they were a year earlier. That's positive, though, right?
Yeah.
3.8% is still.
Just at the rate that it
Coming
was
up.
increasing.
That's not normal.
Yeah.
The rates that they were
We have to
increasing
get that
is not
out of
normal.
our head.
Yeah.
We have to get that out of our head.
2.5% rates are not normal. 20% appreciation is not normal.
Never going to see that again.
Yes.
I mean, if we do, it'll be a real. I mean, this was a one-off. This was a really rare circumstance, and I cannot stress enough how many people just cannot let go of the fact that the interest rates were at 2.75 or 3%, and they didn't take advantage of it, or they couldn't find a house, or they wanted it
and
again.
it's not there anymore.
I'm like, I understand that the $450,000 pre-approval that I gave you was great. I absolutely know that you were put your head and you put your dream home right in front of you, and you couldn't afford it because you wouldn't go $75,000 over asking price, because that's what was the market at that particular time. We had people that were way over the asking price at that time, to where the average person really couldn't really compete
No,
with
it was
those
so
offers.
tough. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that's over.
But they
'cause
gotta let it go.
That was such a stressful time to be a buyer. Is going in and losing so many. I mean, how many people gave up the search and just decided to sit where they're at for a year?
Absolutely.
And we've seen a lot of them come back and get back in the game. But
I would say that's where it is. Why it is that we're busy now is the fact
big part of it
is the fact that a lot of those people that couldn't afford the $25,000 over asking price homes that they were looking at that particular time came back and said, "Okay, David, is now a better time in the market to be able to get involved? Or now can I, do I have to come out of pocket that significant amount of money to be able to buy a house?" No, you don't have to, but the pre-approval amount that you're going to have is significantly lower because the interest rate is almost triple.
So this report's talking about the home price. So the 3.8 that it's up nationally this year is down from 5.6 in December. So it's the trajectory is still positive, but it's not as
Much
steep
of an
as it was
increase.
in December. Prices have been falling for 7 straight months, but the decline was a bit smaller in January. That was likely due to a brief drop in mortgage rates and resulting in a jump in sales. mortgage rates have felt like a yo-yo for the last 6-8 months.
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of, what day do you want to lock? Well, okay.
It really depends on the day.
It really does. Yeah.
You know, and week to week they'll change by a quarter, and then the following week they'll drop a quarter, and it's like
We just have what the market gives us.
yeah,
You know, that's what's here.
And trying to explain that to clients a lot of times is very difficult if you don't phrase it right. In the aspect of knowing that they're going to get shopped, knowing that they're going to get sent information. We pull their credit for something that they're looking into, trying to get a purchase or a pre-approval for, they start to get calls from everywhere if they don't do that opt-out pre-screening. If they don't have that and the pre-approval is over $400,000, they're going to get bombarded
Yeah.
with all kinds of different mortgage companies.
That's the
trying
article.
to
I want to
talk
read
it-
an article saying that they stopped that nonsense. That's what I'd love to
That's
see.
the one that we would love to be able to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
I
that's
just had
crazy.
one buyer and that we just got pre-approved for $1.2 million. This gentleman ended up calling me and go, David, I have never been berated with so many different phone calls and text messages because of the aspect of so many people wanting his loan. And they are willing to say whatever
they're
about
shady.
me.
They are shady. I've had people
About me.
call and say, "Hey, I'm calling from Swift Home Mortgage. Your file was assigned to me. I just needed to clarify a few things. Could you tell me your name and then they just jump right back into it under total false pretense."
Yep.
And I'm all for open market competition. Like, I get it. I'm capitalist all the way through. I understand it. That's okay. I don't like to have to deal with the shadiness that comes along with that. And I feel like with all the privacy laws and everything that we have to adhere to as a originator or a bank or a lender or an institution, privacy is a huge deal. Yet the credit bureaus can just turn around and sell that information to whoever wants it.
Somebody else
What is that?
selling your secrecy.
Why? How is it any of your business that I applied for a mortgage? Now
It's
my
not.
phone's going to ring off the
Shouldn't
hook.
be.
Trigger
Shouldn't
leads
be.
are they're dirty. I think that it's not a good way to go. I don't know.
He sent me a screenshot of 46 text messages that he received in a day and over 45 calls. All to one person.
And are they not worried about the
Redundancy?
escaping me, the do not call list? Like, are they not worried about that?
No.
Are they not getting sued? Are they not getting fines over stuff like that? Because I know people that would go crazy if they receive 46 text messages.
Oh my gosh.
And texting is even more strict than phone calls.
Luckily, this particular buyer, we've helped him purchase prior to. He's not going anywhere. I know that. He's made it very much aware to me. He's like, you've been there for every phone call, all of the questions.
You don't know what you're getting into when you decide to
it's
get in. And especially if they're going to be shady enough to misrepresent.
And he's already had some tricky issues using different real estate agents. And he's like, just by knowing that no two real estate agents are exactly the same, some of my experiences with some of the other agents that he's worked with in different areas were not the same as the first time that he bought a house with us using a particular agent that we have a partnership with. They loved her and then switched over to because of a different circumstance and different area that they were buying in, had like 2 bad experiences with 2 agents. So they also know that it could be the same with mortgage.
Same thing. Right.
And they're like, we're not going to take any chances. But they've been sending over text messages of like funny memes that he does to reply. He doesn't even give them a time of day. He sends funny memes back to them as a response of like, LaBouffe no longer LaBoufing or whatever the case may be, or like whatever the case, any kind of funny meme or offensive meme that he could do just to make it a joke and know that that person doesn't stand a chance.
Nobody's probably even seen him. Probably goes to a computer.
Probably directly. But
Miami, Tampa, and Atlanta again saw the hottest annual price gains of the top 20 cities. Miami prices were up 13.8, Tampa prices were up 10.5, and Atlanta was up 8.4. All 20 cities, however, reported lower prices in the year ending in 2023 versus year ending in 2022. So that's a lot to be said there. Homeowners or home buyers may see more flexible sellers in the spring market coming up, but there's still too few homes available for sale. Mortgage lending may also tighten in light of pressure on the banking system. may, might, could, lots of that. You know, I'm not an economist. I don't pretend to be an economist. So all I know is what's happening in the real world right now. And I feel like our prices, even though they're not going 20% a year, they're steady. And I've always said that I feel like Florida has a long way to go for the bottom to drop out of Florida.
Yeah.
Because we're such a built-in destination for people. And there's so much going on that is going to draw people here. Political, non-political, weather, taxes, financial,
water,
health, like all of it. Like so many people want
boating,
to be here.
fishing,
So I feel
vacation,
like
the dream.
we're not, we're not invincible to market forces by any means, but I feel like some of these bubble cities where they're talking about here, like,
Atlanta.
well, no, Atlanta's doing well with us, but things like Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, San Diego, San Jose, those really grossly overinflated markets.
We've had a lot of buyers coming from California and from New York, specifically.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of people that are moving down to try to avoid a lot of those state taxes.
Yeah.
And
so that's cool.
High influx areas.
That is a brief look at headlines.
Which
That's what's happening today.
Which are like a lot of, two of which were like,
Maybe.
I don't know so much.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the news for you.
Yeah.
Where are you
Don't
clicking?
know who to trust.
Who are you reading? What is that? Who are you going to trust? Is that real? Subscribe and I'll tell you. $5 a month.
I like that.
All right, so I want to get into a little bit of discussion around Veterans Administration and VA loans. We could sit here and talk for 6 hours about VA loans
All day.
and things related to VA loans. But I want to talk about a few things that you might not hear all the time. So when you told me that when you got started as a home buyer, that you weren't aware of the benefit that you had riding around in your back pocket to go and convert to a home buyer at that time, to a homeowner. So how does that play into your peers in all branches in the service? I mean, you got experience with Marines, obviously, but
Yeah.
I'd imagine that this is probably the same across all services.
For the most part.
What do you think? How good of a job does the administration do for active duty people or veterans that are coming out transitioning or even that are out? What kind of resources do they provide to educate about finances and home ownership?
So I tell people all the time, whenever I do VA presentations and stuff with brokerages, is that there really isn't a time throughout my entire career in the Marine Corps that anybody ever sat us down and said, hey, let me explain to you how to use one of the largest benefits that you're going to have for putting on this uniform. There was never a time that anybody even mentioned or talked about how to find out resources. The only time that you ever really get that type of knowledge is from a specific leader that is looking out for specific people. Or a leader
Almost
that's
maybe a mentor that you had in while you're in. Yeah.
I've had so many different leaders or mentors or so many different leaders throughout my military career that, some of them we really could tell they cared a lot about us. And you can tell the differences as soon as one switches from one to the other. You kind of end up, picking out the best of the leadership that you end up having. And then when you become a leader, trying to instill those practices into your leadership style. But really the only people that ever dove into any of that information about finance, proper ways to save money, credit, some of these conversations did happen, but only because that particular leader felt as if it was important information to junior Marines to know. Not because it was on the docket for what the Marine Corps wanted you to teach.
Right. It's not it's not a class you have to take to get out.
No.
Or a certification or certificate that you get to prove that you have been taught this.
Absolutely.
Or like a credit or something like that. Yeah.
All of these, and the military really makes it difficult for you to be able to find sources of information because there's so many .gov websites. There's so many sources, yes, but you really have to be an analytical person and be able to know where to go on these websites, and they don't make it easy to be able to do. So because of which, I like to be able to be a resource for veterans of being able to answer a lot of the questions that they never talked about. No one's ever told them that they have 0% down on a VA loan. Nobody's ever told them that, depending on their disability percentage, the funding fee on the front side of the loan could be completely different. Putting 5% down can knock out 1.3% of the funding fee. If you have a certain disability percentage, you might not even have a funding fee. All those different individual nuances. And that a lot of times is how I get a lot of my business, is because once I have a conversation with another veteran and they know that I know what I'm talking about with a VA loan, with a conversation they've never had with somebody else. And on top of which I give them like more of an instruction conversation, a guiding conversation, instead of like, this is why you want to do your VA loan with me. That type of stuff. It helps. Yeah. It helps drastically be able to build a rapport.
Well, I think the way that that's set up, the government didn't do it on purpose, but they created kind of a cottage market for people like us and other veteran advocate type organizations or companies, whatever it is, corporate or not, nonprofit, either way. It's created an opportunity for us to step up and provide that education and define a path for them to hit that goal, and just tell them what's there. This saves you so much money. Like this, you're not going to have to come up with tens or 20s or 40s of thousands of dollars to be able to get into a house. Yeah. You're making money, you got credit. Let's get rid of that down payment thing. And
I think a lot of issues that come up with the VA loan from veterans is the fact that they believe that they have to deal directly with the VA in order to be able to get this loan product.
Right. Because other things you do have to deal with the VA.
Most of the time.
And I feel like these, all the stories that I've heard about veterans dealing with the VA hospital and VA medical care, if they've had to go through anything like that, they automatically equate in their minds to the VA loan is going to be like it is at the VA hospital.
Defense barrier, way up.
I don't want anything to do with it. No. I'm not ready to go down that road yet.
Especially if they have their disability and they know what it took to get that disability percentage. They don't want to deal with that again. Yeah.
And if there's nobody there to help them understand that the VA doesn't really have anything to do with the funding of the loan, because they delegate the lending authority to people like us.
Yep.
Where the lenders were able to give pass the loan through, and the VA basically just insures that loan on the books, and that money doesn't come directly from the government. It comes from the lender.
Yeah. So that is a huge step of being able to reassure people when you start talking to veterans that are interested in getting into a VA loan, is the fact that if you reassure them that we don't have to, you're not going to get calls from the VA to set up an appointment to talk about your finances. That's not going to be the case.
Right.
Like you do.
And we're going to get it done in 12 days.
Exactly.
It's not going to take you 90 days to get through this.
This isn't something that I'm trying, I'm a year later, you're still trying to find out where your pre-approval is, like your VA disability percentage.
Yeah.
This is something that can be direct to consumer, a 24-hour process. If I can get you a full breakdown of what type of VA options you're going to have, if you're willing to be able to have an open conversation and let me in a little bit on seeing documentation of your income and assets.
Yeah, that's absolutely the truth. And I feel like the veterans are, you and I know this and we live it and breathe it, but the VA loan is not treated as a premier, first place, top of the heap loan. In my eyes, it is. It's my absolute favorite loan to do.
We're like, why?
Because it's so beneficial to the veteran, and when you know what you're doing with them, they're easy. They're not a big huge struggle. And I don't know where I do know where it comes from. It's just old holdovers, like all that old knowledge that old experience never went away.
That VA loan 30 years ago is very different from the VA loan today.
It's a different ball game, and there's no problem whatsoever. And I just want veterans to understand that and know that, because if you're going to be planning routes and staying somewhere and putting your family up, or even if you don't have a family, paying rent, and you got a benefit, why not use it? Make it an investment.
There's the investment aspect of it really is interesting to me, because active duty military gets stationed in a different place in between 2 to 4 years. Usually, with active duty, you could pop around from
Well,
state to
right
state.
now we're in the middle of PCS season.
Yep.
Orders are coming through, and people are starting to figure out what they're doing. And we're going to have some inbound people here and outbound people, so it's a constant flux
Yeah.
in our community of people coming and going because of McDill.
But if you're active duty and you're popping around from duty station to duty station, and you knew, and you had knowledge about the VA loan, you have a susceptible amount of income, an acceptable amount of income, I should say, for a pre-approval for a home that you want to live in at one duty station. Some of these guys that really have the knowledge of the VA loan really take advantage of it and grow a certain amount of wealth by the time they get out of the military, because they can continue to buy houses and continue to rent them out.
Yeah.
It's something that I've seen. Actually, one of my best friends growing up is in the Air Force. He bought his first home in North Dakota. From North Dakota, went to Wyoming, bought a house there, rented out the North Dakota home. From there, bought a house in Louisiana, rented out the Wyoming home, and continuously be able to use this
It's a great way to
grow
advance.
a portfolio.
Absolutely.
Now he's sitting at 3-4 homes that he's continuously pulling in income, and over the course of the market drop with the interest rates, he was able to refinance some of them out of VA loans into conventional loans at a low interest rate.
Opening is up a VA loan again.
Opening up another
Yeah.
VA loan again. So it's like he just did it the right way,
Yeah.
and it's because of the fact that he had the right people telling him about how to take advantage of this great product.
And he's going to be so much farther ahead
Oh my gosh!
when he gets
light
out.
years.
Even when he's ready to retire.
Light years away. It's
gonna be
Or
crazy.
light years in front. You know, he's done it. He's done it several times, and now he's building a cabin in Georgia. I mean, he's doing things smart, but you don't have to necessarily make a lot of money over the course of a short amount of time to be able to be successful. If you take these little tiny increments of knowledge and apply them in the right ways with an acceptable amount of income to be able to get approval on the loans, then you can really grow your wealth or your portfolio much faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's just a prime example of somebody that doesn't have this 250, 300 year K a year job, but was able to make himself, self-sufficient income coming in from an additional amount of investment properties that now are paying for themselves.
Yeah. And if you can use the VA loan to do it, it's so much better.
So much better.
No PMI,
No 20%
no
down.
down payment. And yeah, you got to follow the rules. I mean, you're not buying investment properties with VA loans, but eventually you'll turn that into an investment. Your cost of acquisition is so low that you're in the money nearly immediately.
time.
Yeah. So what's some advice that you would give to someone either coming out and separating, or, this could go two ways, because it doesn't have to be military. It doesn't have to be a separation. It can be somebody coming out of college or high school or trade school, or somebody getting ready to plant roots and stay in one spot for a while. What kind of advice would you give them about real estate, mortgages, planning, all encompass there?
Date the rate, marry the house. If you are able to not pay rent to other entities, other companies, and be able to get into a home as early as possible, you're going to set yourself up for the most amount of equity that you can have for other opportunities later. Coming out of the military or coming out of college, I'd say the faster you can get ownership underneath your as a notch on the belt for where you live, the better opportunity you're going to set up for a future for additional equity, different investment opportunities, additional portfolio growth, all of the things that eventually make it a retirement scenario much easier. The earlier you start and being able to get this knowledge, the better. Every circumstance is different. So I would say that, find a loan officer or a loan originator that you trust, or reach out to where we can have an open conversation about where your status is now, as opposed to where your status needs to be when you purchase.
Yeah.
What things need to change? Do you need to work on credit? Do you need to buy down your liabilities? Do you need to pay off credit card debt? Did you take out a $1,200 car payment, when you were in college? and that's basically 50% of your income.
Mm-hmm. It's a super nice car, though.
I hope you can live in it. You know, I hope it's got great
fast.
long term. Yeah, it's fast. Fast way to be able to not have a house. So having an open conversation about what steps you need to start knocking out to be able to get to the home ownership status as early as possible. And the only way of being able to know that is to either research yourself or to talk with a trusted either financial planner or loan officer.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really the two best type of people to be able to have a conversation with, I would feel, to be able to know what most of your options are going to be.
What do you have to say to people that think that the process is too hard?
Ooh, have a sip of bourbon after that question. I feel like a lot of that is just a mental block or an excuse. To be honest with you, I feel like a lot of the process is too hard just means that you don't have the drive to be able to take care of yourself. Because the process is only too hard because you don't want to take care of taking care of yourself. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because
partially. I've got another thing to think about on that though. So I think that what are you dealing with that makes it hard? Because some situations are harder than others.
Yeah.
Right. When you have a person who's had 15 jobs in the last 2 years with 7 different bank accounts, half of them overdrawn to cover the others, but you got money in cash sitting around in your safe at home or in crypto or in wherever kind of weird account that's out there. And then you've got credit issues, collections, things that might have popped up that you maybe could have prevented from happening, but you just kind of let it go.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, partially. Sometimes it's just basic raw numbers. Like you can't afford it, and it is what it is. You know, you're no less of a person over that. It's just this $500,000 house is not going to be supported by your $30,000 income, and maybe you're self-employed, and maybe you write off too much in taxes, or you don't claim anything that you get and you deal in cash or under the table.
Yeah.
Those are the ones, all of those examples are the ones where it is hard. And there are a lot of things that we're going to be asking for because of this situation that you're coming out of.
Yep.
You've inadvertently and unknowingly created a whole bunch of paperwork and requests that we need to solve these problems that are popping up on the loan approval or to get to the point of a loan approval. I think those are it's as easy as you make it.
Letters of explanation after letters of explanation, VOEs, additional bank statements, additional gift letters. I mean, the trail of it continues to go.
Yeah.
And depending on the circumstances that people in. So yeah, I would say maybe the best advice for people that say that it's too hard is to try to dive into why.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Why do you feel this way? And let me kind of rebut it.
That comes back to, I think you said it earlier about expectations, because we can figure out pretty quickly what kind of loan we're going to get into at the stage of an application, especially at the stage documents when they get all our stuff that we need. And if we can sit down and have a conversation and be like, listen, this isn't a cakewalk. Like there's going to be hurdles. There's going to be things that we need to get through. There's going to be some outside of the box thinking. There's going to be some things that you're going to need to do. But if you're on board, I'm on board, and we're going to help get you there. But you have to be reactive, and we're not going to ask you for stuff unless we need it. We're not doing it for fun.
But if you don't have that conversation,
if you don't have it, they're going to hate you.
Because
you're going to ask them 15 different things over 15 different days.
You are a nuisance.
Yeah. And because sometimes, we're pretty good about asking for everything that we need right now up front. But sometimes you get into things that you couldn't foresee. Sometimes you have a ex-Jamaican police officer who relocated to America, and we're going to have to get a verification of employment from Jamaican
police
the police department.
That was yesterday.
Yeah, by the way, we're right in the middle of that now. We got it. It's done. But man, that was it almost took a trip down there to get it done.
At the beginning of that, the borrower knew that was going to be a process because he obviously had dealt with that particular police department. And
Not the
basically told
best
me,
on paperwork.
No.
Right.
And they basically just said, they're going to tell me no.
From an employee from what, 2017 or something
2015.
like that? 15? Yeah.
2015. And he sent in his brother and his sister to try to get that paperwork for him. And the Jamaican Police Department went,
No, man.
no, man. Not going to happen.
Yeah, so things happen like that. So we have to be real careful, and we have to be crystal clear in the beginning. Like, we're in your corner. We're fighting for you.
I'm going to go through it with you.
And we're going to get you there, but you gotta be on board.
You got to be willing to do it. You know, if you want me to be in the trenches with you, you got to be able to get your boots wet.
Yeah,
a little bit. And sometimes the circumstances of chasing down paperwork are going to be way more detrimental or way more work than other people. Other people, and I'd love to say this about VA as well, is a lot of veterans within
squared away
4 hours. I have every piece of documentation that I need because it's crazy how much I can tell by the rank that they have. Right away, I'm going to get this information. If I'm talking to an E5 and above, I'm going to get that documentation within 24 hours most of the time. They're on top of it, and it's going to be the easiest loan process that there is because I'll have all documents. Nothing's going to be a surprise to me. Or to the underwriter because everything's right in front of you from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Those loans, people can't believe that we close in 11 days or we get a pre-approval. You know, we get full clear to close in 11 days, and they're like, "How you people are amazing," and we really can generate a great rapport with them. But it's because of how on top of it they really are that makes our job easier to be able to do so. It's the experiences that we end up having with people that do not have all their documentation or their head on a swivel for all of how to get all that documentation, and we have to handhold to be able to get all that make it look like we're a worse experience because it's taking more time to do so. But a lot of that ends up being on the borrower. Yeah. Sadly.
What's the craziest loan closing you can remember?
Ooh. Was it probably SAP? It's probably SAP.
Is it the one with the windows?
Oh my gosh. Yes. We had a borrower who, during the inspection found out that none of the windows in the entire home closed or opened. They were painted shut, completely
Landlord special.
shut. Yeah. Obviously on an inspection, there's no egress. There's no way to be able to get out in case of a fire, so they're never going to approve that. There was so much work that had to be done with this particular type of property or that particular address in order to be able to get that. So that was one hurdle. On top of which, he would submit an application and pay stubs for a job that he had being a truck driver. And as soon as I would get those pay stubs, he would quit that job and start being a truck driver for somewhere else and not tell me. So I would assume that he's continuously driving trucks. We would get to a certain part of the loan process to be able to get an approval. My video would come out for the next step of congratulations, we got the appraisal in, and then the underwriter would want a new bank statement, or the underwriter would want to get a VOE on his current truck driving company. They would call the company that he just submitted bank statements for, or pay stubs for, and he no longer works there. He now works for, such and such trucking company, which now is 1099.
Classic fail.
You go from W-2 to 1099, you're restarting your 2 years. So basically had to make good with the W-2 company that he quit. Come back to work for them for the remainder of the contract so that way he could actually get the keys to the home continuously and actually get the approval, get all of that work done to the house to make sure the inspection was going to pass. And then we finally got him clear to close, and the sellers didn't show up to the closing. Totally was under the impression that he would not be able to come through with being a clear to close, and we're waiting to just collect his escrow. So when we showed up, the sellers and the seller's agent didn't even show up to the title company, which we had a scheduled closing for for 4.5 hours. I sat there with him and his father trying to explain that this is not my fault.
Yeah.
We got you the
Where
clear.
the money's waiting. They got the money. They're
It's
waiting.
here.
Yeah.
I have done my part, and I got you to the finish line. I don't know why these people are not here. And it ends up being that they had to, the buyer's agent had to threaten litigation against the seller's agent and the seller because of the fact that we made our contingencies
And you were within date, and it wasn't an
Within date.
expired contract. It was all agreed to.
all
Yeah.
legit and all on time. So for how much we had to work as a company, because I mean, we had our processors, our office manager involved, you were involved. I mean, we had everybody involved in that transaction trying to bring it to the finish line. And we did. And we were very happy and proud of the fact that we were. And then the seller doesn't show up, which never expected. So yeah, that was on a Friday. And then by Monday, after threatening litigation, they ended up signing. So what
They
happened.
still got what they agreed to. They got their money.
There's
They
no
got their
benefit
sale.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it should
That
be
was
said
crazy.
that's the crazy one, but very typically they're not that crazy.
No.
It's most of the time they're very clean cut, in, out, run the thing, get it done.
And I feel like
On to the
people
next one.
associate the cost of property to how difficult a loan would be. And that, for the most part, is the opposite.
I think it's an inverse relationship.
Absolutely. One of the easiest transactions that I have ever done in my career of being a loan originator was the $1.6 million home
VA loan, right?
VA loan that we sold, that we helped purchase. That was the easiest transaction across the board. And it went right back to exactly what I was talking about with the fact that this was a retired colonel, full bird,
Yep.
that came out with every piece of documentation from both his current job, the retirement and disability percentage, and everything we requested for documentation within 24 hours.
Yeah.
It was done. I had him that approval all the way up to $2.2 million within 24 hours of us having our
speaking
first conversation.
of those big fat loan sizes, that's relatively new in VA.
Yep.
For unlimited VA loan.
Yep.
So, if you're shopping in the 3 millions, 4 millions, you can do 100% financing VA loan backed by the VA, low interest rate, no PMI, all of that stuff.
and not have to have price adjustments for jumbos.
That's like the best loan product in America.
Period.
In my opinion. That's why
Period.
when I hear people hate on them, I'm like, you guys, you don't even know.
And that also goes along with certain properties that I see. Somebody's really excited about being able to, look at different addresses, and they say, "Hey, can I also get approval for a conventional loan?" And I just want to go, "Why?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?" Because this property that I really like isn't accepting VA loans. And I'm like, okay, either one of two things are happening there. Either one, there's something wrong with the property that the real estate agent, the listing agent, doesn't feel as if it's going to pass inspections. And it's a large problem that's probably going to cause
And
the
to make it
seller's
clear, a VA inspection is really no different. When I say inspection, I mean a VA appraiser. That's the eyes and ears of the loan, of the lender. A VA inspection is all about safety issues, really. So if you got exposed wiring, if you've got a compromised structure, if you've got
Paint
broken
chips.
windows, lead paint chips, like those types of things. But FHA is calling out those same things too.
Absolutely.
So VA is not on an island when it comes to inspections. They don't go in and beat the place up harder than they do on a FHA or conventional loan.
Not even a little bit. Those are the same people.
Same appraisers.
The same exact
Absolutely,
appraisers.
Same appraisers, yeah. They're just VA certified.
VA used to have their own appraisers, and that's maybe where they got a lot of their bad rep. But now the FHA appraisers are the same people predominantly as VA appraisers. And so one of two things are happening in that particular instance is, one, there's something that they know is going to cause an issue on the appraisal or the inspection. And it's going to cost the seller a lot of money. Or two, the listing agent just is not knowledgeable in VA loans.
Right.
That literally ends up being one of the two circumstances that happen in that situation. And we love to be the voice of reason sometimes with some of those listing agents. I've actually called listing agents for listings that have said no to VA loans and just asked them why. And they just say that they don't have experience, or they'll tell me that, something's
VA loans
going
never
on.
appraise.
They never appraise, right? The inspections, I don't trust VA appraisers or I don't trust VA inspectors. I'm like, well, there's no difference. You don't know that. But the VA aspect of it for the loan product, listing agents are just scared sometimes of not doing something or transaction that they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to be able to take those agents sometimes if they're willing and able to have a conversation, open to having a conversation about what scares you about the VA loan. What particular process of it makes you feel as if it's any different from any other loan product that you will accept on this transaction? What questions do you have that'll make this a little bit more comfortable? Because I've got a VA buyer that's very interested in being able to buy this home.
And to take it back to, life is not fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
But those people are actively blocking those who have served our country and earned their VA entitlement that they're literally entitled to.
Yep.
And they're throwing up a wall for them and saying, "Oh, no, not going to take your VA loan. Get out of here."
Yep.
That's dangerous. That's
because they're not willing to, sometimes learn about the information that's different from a VA loan from a conventional.
or they had one bad experience and they think everything's the same.
One.
Yeah. Well, that's why you go out and you teach. You meet, you teach, you educate, and it pays off. A lot of people they've opened their eyes to the benefits of that loan.
That is
Not being scared
actually
of it.
my favorite part of this job.
Coincidentally, my next question is, what is your favorite part of the job?
My favorite part of the job is to teach, and to. I like being in an open house. Although sometimes open houses, obviously, anyone who's ever run an open house has sat in a house by themselves for a couple hours at some point in time.
Pro tip to realtors: make sure that you bring a chair with you to an open house, because I've worked some open houses with agents before, and we'd show up, and I don't have the listing, so I don't know. I show up and there's zero furniture in the entire house, nothing.
Everybody's standing on or sitting on a counter.
And you're signed up for 4 hours, and that gets a little bit old.
Yeah.
So pack a lawn chair or two, and bring a little table with you or something.
Yeah, make sure you got something to sit on, or else the dogs are going to be barking. So one of my favorite things is to end up having a conversation with somebody that tells me originally that they're already pre-approved. Pre-approved, okay, great. Who's it with? Whatever the case may be. And then through general open conversation while they're walking through the house, I find out that they're a veteran. As they're talking about their VA loan approval, I find out who it's through. I just ask probing questions about making sure that do you have a disability percentage? Does the loan officer that you're speaking with or the approval that you ended up getting, did they know that you can put 5% down and lower your funding fee by 1.3%? Did they tell you that? No, I've never heard anything like that. Did they tell you that with your 100% disability, you can actually not have to pay, one large portion of your taxes that you have? I've never heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
I met a guy randomly at an event one time that's been a 100% disabled veteran for 9 years. He's owned his house for 11 years. He paid every dollar of his taxes
Oh no, really?
for the past 11 years and had no idea that once he gets that 100% disability that he can not have to worry about paying the
knock your
Valorum,
taxes down to next to nothing.
the ad valorem
Sometimes
part of the
nothing.
taxes,
Yeah.
which is significant. I asked him how much his tax bill was, and he told me $550. I said, I don't even want to make you throw up and talk about the fact that, probably 500 of that you wouldn't have to pay if you would have just had the right person to tell you.
Talk about today's values. $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 tax bills are super common.
Yeah.
And if you can take those down, go 10,000 to 1,000, that's a huge benefit.
Especially if they're buying in anything that's a newer community, newer construction community,
Yeah.
because these
CDDs and everything tacked on.
they're huge.
Yeah.
They're huge. And if you can have something with such a huge benefit like 100% disability and you don't know the right questions to ask,
Yeah, you're just going along.
You're just going along.
That leads me to talk about the big names in the VA world, the ones that are on base and in all the publications and the credit unions and
the ones that are tagged as military companies, but they're not run by military at all.
Yep.
Yeah, those
so
guys.
I gotta, they give them credit. They do a lot of good things. They got good rates. They got good insurance products, banking, auto loans, credit cards. They make it convenient for service members to work through things. But they also do mortgages. But they also do everything else.
Yep.
And so I think that, back to what I was saying about Chase earlier, when I worked there, you're in that huge machine, and I think a lot of the personal connection and coming alongside of somebody for their journey through this whole process, either months or weeks or years, however long, those types of businesses just cannot support that. They're not set up for it. And it is what it is. You got your bank there, you got your insurance products, your investment CDs, whatever. Mortgage is a little different. And you need to really think hard about who has your best interest in mind.
And I was just telling a brokerage yesterday, keep in mind that a lot of these banks and large lenders, some of the loan officers that are there don't have their license,
Right.
their state license. They go through the bank's training as to how to do a loan, not a state licensed loan officer. So, for instance, we just had a gentleman, of a 3-generation family, call me, tried to save a deal that was absolutely dead. There was
Shouldn't have gotten started.
This shouldn't have gotten started. This particular gentleman was told that he was qualified for the VA and was sent a particular quote on a certain amount for this. They were under contract. They sent in, it was like a $400,000 contract, $350, somewhere in that range. They were under contract, already had the $600 inspection paid for, only to find out he does not qualify for the VA because he was active duty for only 19 days. So they didn't pull a COE. There's absolutely no way he's going to be able to use that particular product. So that interest rate is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
The zero down, no longer there. And then on top of which, whenever we priced him out to try to see if we could save it
Through another product.
through a completely different product, we went through FHA, and I explained to him, with the amount of time and service that you ended up having, it's not something that's actually applicable for you to be able to use this product. We tried to get him FHA approved, which we were able to, but the payment difference between what we quoted him and what Veterans United quoted him was $1,200 difference. And we were trying to figure out, specifically, how are we this far off? How is it that they could possibly quote this low on this particular property? Come to find out, their quote and everything that was sent over to them to try to get them under contract and under the Veterans United pipeline was because they were getting quoted only principal and interest. There was no taxes.
Mm-hmm.
There was no homeowners insurance potential quote or
HOA,
estimate.
stuff.
No HOA. They were missing large sections.
Yeah. Well, I just mentioned,
what your mortgage is.
That could easily be an $8,000 tax bill.
Oh my gosh.
That's,
It was
or
huge.
$6,000, $500 a month just in taxes, plus another $200-$300 in mortgage and homeowners insurance. You're touching $800, maybe $100 in HOA. You're up to $900. So that's a huge difference. And that's, if you're savvy enough to look at quotes and understand things and have done this before and have navigated these homeowner waters, more power to you.
Yep.
You can see a quote and be like, hey, where's my taxes and insurance?
Yep.
We know to ask for that because we have statements coming to our house and
Of
we
course.
know what our escrow accounts look like because we've had mortgages for a long time. But if you're new or if you're getting all green lights and thumbs up from your guy at the call center, you're like, well, I did what I was supposed to do. I talked to a lender and I got pre-approved, and here's my contract.
And he even sent me over a payment.
Yeah, that's so.
How much more confidence are you going to instill in somebody that's completely inaccurate?
Yeah, I'm scared of. I don't want to say I'm scared. I don't know where that came from. What I think happens at those places is not all of those loan officers are bad loan officers.
No,
but the good ones can't do it all.
Yep.
And they get the newbies and the people who don't care and the people who shouldn't be in that seat, and they just backfill whoever they need to and put them on the phone and let them step into that.
Yep.
And that's the kind of chaos it can create in reality.
Well, with that being said, there are two positive things that come from something else like that happening. Is that one, now they have all the confidence in the world in me because I explained every aspect of what should have happened, what their expectations should have been, why they don't, they're not applicable for the VA loan, where this payment discrepancy is. Now I have them as a client and they're not going to go anywhere. And I know they're not going to shop other places or whatever the case, because you can be there as a source of information of building a bond of trust. They went through something that really hurt their feelings. And the first phone call that we had was a 30-minute long, teary-eyed.
I'm sorry, but this is, I wish I was the first one to get here.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah, I know. Hate to tell you this, but
I hate to rain on the parade, but I'm going to be upfront about exactly what type of expectations you should have for this particular type of purchase and loan amount and things like that. So it ended up having a lot of confidence built between me and the client, but it also, because it was on a 3-way call with the real estate agent that wanted to get an explanation, built a stronger rapport with me and the realtor, because they know that I'm going to take the time out of my day to explain somebody else's mess up and then be able to try to make it right and give them actual viable options.
Yeah, which is great. That's what you're there for. That is what you do every day.
It's crazy.
That's that's noble. I hate it when we inherit other people's messes.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes to build new client relationships.
Yeah.
You gotta walk through fire sometimes.
How can you and I make the real estate industry better?
Ooh, knowledge. I would say constantly being available for teaching new loan products and helping guide real estate agents to what questions to ask their potential buyers on the front end to vet them out to find out if it's worth their time. Not necessarily worth their time. That's a terrible use of words there. But if it's an active client that potentially could buy now, or if it's somebody, they maybe shouldn't show houses to right away. But some of the biggest things that I get back from real estate agents is the fact that I've showed this guy 12 houses and he still won't give me a pre-approval. Why? Why did you do that?
Because I guarantee you there's some skeletons there somewhere that are going to fall out
because
as soon as you get a contract.
If they haven't gotten a pre-approval already, it's because they either don't want to disclose information or they are scared of what they're going to find out because they don't necessarily know the information.
There's the chance that you have the super clean, squared away client too, but
a lot less rare.
Yes.
Or a lot more rare, I should say.
A lot less chance.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Most of the time, the squared away people have no problem.
This is what it takes. Yeah, let me do it.
Here you go.
Yeah,
Pop. Yep. Let's just knock that out.
I think my favorite approach that realtors take, some realtors, not all realtors, I've heard agents say that, if there's no pre-approval, I'm not showing them a house. And they draw this firm line. And it's like, okay, well, the next real estate agent is
absolutely gonna do that.
Meet them at that house they want to see and take that opportunity to say hello and here's who we are, here's how I work, this is what I do. You need to get pre-approved and I'll go show you 15 houses tomorrow if you want to do that.
Here's how we can help out the real estate agents in that particular circumstance is the fact that if they knew the proper questions to ask them to vet them out, they'll know on whether or not that's actually going to be something that they should probably show them the house, and they just haven't had the time to be able to speak with a lender yet, or if it probably is going to be something that's going to spin the wheels.
Yeah.
If a starting off real estate agent knew 5 or 6 different loan questions to ask and what responses they get from their buyers are going to be a good, or a direct red flag, then that should be probably the line that they either tiptoe over or stay behind.
Yeah. I agree. Just kind of getting a feel for the whole situation.
Yeah. Because you don't want to lose business just because you weren't willing to go to a house. But if you had the questions to know that if it's going to be potentially a good loan, a good qualifying buyer, then go show them the house.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Absolutely. So we all see a lot of people moving to Florida, right? You talked about California coming here and New York coming here. I was, 2 weeks ago, I was on the phone. I got a call from a lady in New York wanting to buy a second home in the Gandy area in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
$340 purchase price, second home, New York buyer. Missed a call as I was on the phone. Called that person directly back. Guy from New York wanting to move to Wesley Chapel, second home, $350 purchase price, New York. I'm like, what? Hold on a minute. It took me because my brain I think in terms of specifics of scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not the best with names, but I remember the scenario first before I remember the name. And when I get two of those similar purchase price, both from New York, both second homes, I'm like, okay, let me draw a line here because I'm going to get confused. And then I walked up to the front and I happened to look out the window and there was a car parked there with a New York plate on it. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like I just
3 in a row.
2 inbounds, and then I'm looking at a guy with a New York plate and my parking spot out here. So my question is, what do you tell people who think about or who are planning to relocate to Florida? Like, what do you tell them about our state, how to get here, what to do before they start uprooting and making moves?
Ooh, I would say, one, I try to find out what kind of knowledge of Florida they end up having. Do you have family members that are already here? Are you snowbirds? Is it something that you visited a couple times and just happen to love the area? If so, where did you go? Were you in Ocala? Were you in Tampa? Were you in Orlando? Were you in Jacksonville? Those are completely different areas.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, even the greater Tampa area has completely different areas.
Yeah,
and we're just as drivable as any other big city is. But if you have work in, I don't know, South Tampa, and you were trying to buy a place in like Pasco, Epperson Ranch, or something like that, or like up around San Antonio, not all the new development up there. That's going to be there's a little spread between
drastic difference.
Yeah, you're gonna have to hike it.
But I also feel like that a lot of times those kind of conversations with the specifics are a lot of real estate agent conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also try to stay in my lane because I also don't want to contradict something that potentially the real estate agent has had a already existing conversation about.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to say, oh, Tampa's the best, or Brandon's my area, or you should live here, you should live there. And then, you know, the realtor says, you know, contradicts that.
Right.
I don't want to be a roadblock for the realtor.
Yeah.
I don't.
We're here to tell you what your payment's going to be and how much you can afford. And
now, is there open conversations that I can have about the types of activities that they're interested in trying to be able to do in Florida? Absolutely. You know, if you're telling me you're a big fishing person, you know, you're big on boating.
We got some water close to us,
a
right?
little bit.
Yeah.
You know, kind of every direction that you drive for 2 hours, you're going to at least hit, you know, water somewhere. So depending on what they're trying to do when they get down here, I just want to be around sunshine. Okay, well, that's going to be the whole state. I'm not worried about that. I'm big time into the hunting situation. Okay, you might want to be in more closer to North Florida. I'm really big on fishing. Maybe you want to be in the Bay. Maybe you want to try to do something closer to South Florida because you can get deep sea fishing.
We got to always keep in mind the Florida man is out there.
Yeah. Oh,
you know?
yeah. Always lingering.
Yeah, he's out there, and a lot of Florida men come out of South Florida.
I can't really say anything because I own a wolf. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of a Florida man myself.
Yeah.
And people always go, is that a coyote? And I'm like, no,
it's a wolf.
It's a total Florida man thing. I'm like, oh man, I guess I can't really say anything. I do own a wolf.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I'm not over here riding a gator, you know, or gator hunting, you know, by jumping on its back, you know, something crazy like that. But yeah, Florida kind of instills a little bit of confidence that people probably shouldn't have sometimes.
Yeah. I agree.
Florida man is always lingering.
And Florida man's usually from somewhere else, though.
Yeah.
That's not what they don't tell you that.
Usually from the bayou. It's a lot of Florida man congruencies.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts behind the market shift, our changing market, and how can agents adjust and adapt to fluctuating market conditions? Like, what can agents do to help insulate themselves from market changes?
Ooh. Okay. Don't get set in your own ways of saying it's a buyer's market or it's a seller's market every day. I feel like once you start to develop certain sales patterns or conversation patterns that a lot of times people have, you're thinking that it's going to be that way forever.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of to say, I only focus on listings. I'm not a buyer's agent.
Why?
Or I only want to help buyers. I don't want to take on listings.
Why?
Yeah.
Why are you putting yourself or shutting that door on additional amount of income?
Mm-hmm.
Take these opportunities and learn from them. It's the same way with the mortgage game. When we were in the heat of COVID, purchasing wasn't our main source of income. It was refinancing. We had
everybody and their brother needed to refi.
Needed a refi.
Yeah.
You know, why would you, how dumb would it have been for me to be like, I'm only going to deal with buyers. I'm not touching refinances. That would have been a little bit of a shot in my own foot.
That's funny you bring that up because we're not a refi intensive shop.
No.
Like our refi percentages have always been pretty low, and it's been repeat business, past clients, referrals in. We don't actively market to do refis.
No.
And it got to the point where
we had to.
We weren't marketing. They were just, people were calling.
Nonstop.
They were coming to us because we did their loan a year, 2, 3 years ago, whatever. And we did a good job, and they like us. And so they were coming back. They wanted to do it more. And I think a big thing about that whole thing is we didn't lose sight of our purchase business at the same time. We kept up doing stuff that we do. COVID was a thing. So we were very much in our own bubbles. But we stayed present with our people and our agents and made sure that we were there for them for anything that they needed.
If anything, we kept purchase as our number one and refinance, even though it was a very high demand.
It got to about 50-50.
Yeah.
For a little while.
It was a very high demand, but we still knew that the refinance aspect was going to take some time because of the appraisals.
Mm-hmm.
The appraisals being 30, 45 days out. Remember those days?
That was still a quick one.
That was crazy.
We were seeing 2-3 months sometimes.
That was absurd. And it was very hard to set proper expectations when you've got appraisals that far out and just the demand of appraisals at that particular time. Now, that's not an issue.
No.
It's gone back to the point of not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Appraisals can be done very quickly. They can be, the appraised value can come in until we can have an actual conversation as to where we are on the actual loan with an appraisal, instead of doing it the day before closing, 2 days before closing, 3 days before closing, right up to the finish line. We were getting this information back, and that's a completely different circumstance of trying to, resurrect some of these loans that, because of the appraised value that it came back, it was technically dead.
Mm-hmm.
It was real close.
Well, everybody learned
slow heartbeat
about all kinds of appraisal issues during that time.
Yep.
Everybody was an appraisal expert.
Another growing period,
mm-hmm.
another growing and learning period.
And, the appraisers are there to act as a throttle on the market, because if they're just giving everybody the values that you want, then we're going to get in trouble again.
Absolutely.
And you got to have the comps recorded and done and sold in the books for that to be a comp. You can't say that this house is listed, it's about to sell. Well, it hadn't sold yet, so it's not a comp.
Which, again,
we got into that a lot, and everybody was, when the values were shooting up faster than the appraised values could catch them, everybody learned about appraisal gaps, and everybody learned about appraisal contingencies and getting those written into their contracts. And that was a forced learning experience. So back to your answer, you're saying don't put yourself in a corner and say, this is all I'm going to do, because you got to shift and you got to adapt. And
it's going to change whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
It's going to change quickly.
I can see an agent in 2004 saying, I'm never going to do a short sale. And then 2006 rolls around, 7. Mm-hmm. And now if you don't know how to do short sales, you're not going to be able to be a real estate agent now, because this is all that's happening. Short sales are huge.
Yeah. Trying to explain to it, or having a real estate agent say, I'm never going to have a Facebook or Instagram.
At one point I heard that there were more listings than there are agents.
I believe it.
And I don't know if that was, I'm sorry. No, I'm totally backwards. More agents than there are listings. And I don't know if that was to one area or the whole country or what, but you know, we saw this boom time during COVID have a lot more people step into the industry and become real estate agents.
Because everybody heard about somebody that was cashing checks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I get that, but a lot of those people now, and even lenders on that side,
Yeah.
a lot of different
Everybody,
people came into it and were
everybody.
writing loans left and right, and it was hard to get business because everybody was trying to cut your legs out from under you on the commission that they were taking. They would undercut your quote, undercut your LE. If you had somebody that was not willing to not shop you, was essentially like, and they sent out your information through your LE to somebody else, who quotes last wins. I mean, that's just what the industry was at that time. But there were so many different loan officers and mortgage lenders that are no longer existent now because they
Lots of
couldn't
retraction.
They couldn't hold on to their repeat business because they didn't build proper relationships with the real estate agents. They didn't build proper relationships with repeat business, and they didn't have necessarily what it took to be able to stay in there. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy how far we've come.
Yeah. And it's ever changing, and the only constant in this industry is change. And I think everybody knows that. And if you don't, it will become blatantly obvious to you. The longer that you stay in the industry, the longer you see it's like, okay, we're reinventing again. Here it comes. We're going to reinvent again, and it just happens, and that's just the way it is.
It is kind of like that. Is the second that you kind of get comfortable doing one particular type of either loan product or really heavily focusing on refinancing or first time home purchase or USDA or whatever the case, whatever niche you end up having. Once you get kind of comfortable in that, the market switches. The market switches, and you got to adapt.
Well, you have to adapt. Yeah, you have to be able to roll with the punches and changes and absorb and be forward thinking the whole time.
Absolutely.
This whole industry is not for the faint of heart.
No,
you're gonna have struggles.
It's gonna be feast or famine. A lot of times.
What advice do you have for homeowners? Or no, let me change that. What advice do you have for home buyers looking to purchase in Florida?
Some of the one of the biggest things for me is about knowing that this is a long-term process. The long-term process of it, a lot of people just start to think about exactly, if I buy now, it's going to start making me money now, and that's not the mindset that you want to be in. It's about setting yourself up for the long term, setting yourself up for the long-term goals of property wealth or longevity for being able to add to a portfolio. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. Your equity is not going to go from the second you buy a home to double that within a year. It's going to be something that you want to make sure that you're doing the proper research and talking with the right professionals to be able to make a long-term goal of wealth.
What do you tell people who are stressed out during the home search and who it's too much for them? What kind of advice do you have for them?
There's always another one. There's always another one. And tomorrow it might pop up. It might pop up in a week. They have to understand that particular property, just because they don't get the deal that they want originally, there needs to be a ceiling as to when that deal does not make sense and when it does. Once the particular contract or the particular offer that you put in does not work or you need to go or escalate, you need to be able to walk away. You need to be able to walk away the same way that you need to at a car dealership. If it gets to a certain point to where this is not a good financial decision, have the emotional aspect be separate from the intelligent aspect of what's actually going to be financially beneficial. Be able to walk away. It's okay if you don't get that house, because there's always going to be another one. People are always going to be selling homes.
And it's a long-term commitment.
Yeah.
This is a long arc. It's not a month-to-month thing.
Because if that deal doesn't make sense today, it absolutely is not going to make sense in a year. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be paying that payment no matter what.
Well, they say you make or lose money when you buy the house, not when you sell it.
Yep.
So if you buy it right, and that's when you're going to come out on top.
Yep. And the same thing happened for me. I got very emotionally attached the first time I was looking into homes. I found this particular home that I really, really was interested in, and I felt I could see myself in it. I could visualize all the furniture. Everybody has that aha moment, when they can see themselves in the house, and I didn't get it. And I started to really go out of my way to bid higher and try to get everything I possibly could.
This ain't gonna happen to me again.
Yeah, no way. Right. And I just realized very quickly that I was starting to get into a point of making a very bad financial decision for the long term. And I had to take my emotions out of it. And then I ended up finding the house that I currently have and ended up making a great financial decision at that time because I was able to walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. All right. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
On today's episode of the Florida Housing Hour. Currently, you can find us on the FloridaHousingHour.com. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio. We're waiting on Apple to get there with us. But we're going to be everywhere podcasts are heard. So watch out. Anybody left in this business park, I'm coming for you.
Yeah,
Number one podcast.
Number one podcast.
We'll see you again next time.
Take care, guys.